Meeting of the Board of Education to order. The Board of Education public hearing on the 2022-2023 budget will be held on Tuesday, February 1st at 7 p.m. in the board meeting room. The next regular Board of Education meeting is on Tuesday, February 8th at 7:30 p.m. in the board meeting room. So thank you, all of those that are participating in the double header this week. In our meeting last night and this evening, thanks for continuing to join us. Participate and provide your thoughts and feedback. Most appreciated. My comments will be more around the process tonight and next week. The board will go through the process tonight of looking at each RC. It is traditionally called our cut or add night. So we will go through each RC and anyone can put up anything that they want in terms of those particular RCs. So we'll go through that process this evening. And you'll hear some of the thought processes from board members on those particular RCs. Then we will go next week to public comment, public hearing. And I think it's important before we finish up the process that we continue to hear from the public around the overall budget. And then after that, we'll go back to work on what's proposed in terms of adds and cuts. So that's kind of how things will proceed. And then I think the rest of the agenda is kind of normal items on the agenda. With that, we will go to public comment. And Michelle, just give me a moment. I think we had a lot of people last night, but I think it's worth a reminder around public comment. So again, I will say some reminders around public comment. Public comment is 3 minutes per person. You cannot speak for 3 minutes and look to speak again during the first public comment session. You can speak at the end of the public comment session for an additional time frame if you're there for the second public comment. Keep in mind you are addressing the Board of Education with your public comments, nobody else. Board of Ed public comment should not be used to respond to or argue a point made by a person that has made a public comment. This is not a debate forum. Comments about other town committees or organizations should be made to those entities at their public meetings or public comments. Should they have comment? Comments align with what has previously been said. You can acknowledge that with your name and address that you agree with comments that have been said about this evening's topics. Public comment should focus on the Darien Board of Education agenda and programs and topics specific to the district and education. Public comment is not a forum for advertising, websites or social media sites, and that will not be allowed. So with that, Michelle, I will turn it over to you. We will start with folks in the audience.
Good evening, John Dunn, 175.
Mr. Dunn, could you just hold on just a second? And Michelle, could you just go through your...
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Good evening. For participants in person, please wait for the chairperson to acknowledge and call each participant to the microphone. For participants via Zoom, please click the raised hand option. The facilitator will acknowledge and mute each participant. For all participants, please state your name and address clearly for the record log. Each participant will have up to 3 minutes to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Go ahead.
Of course, jumping the gun. John Dunn, 175 Raymond Street. I would like to reiterate my comments from last night and ask the board once again to hear and heed the concerns of nearly 1,000 of your constituents who are opposed to funding both the Open Choice Program and DEI consultant Ken Shelton. There are so many concerned and frustrated parents and residents in Darien right now. Over the past week, now 951 people have signed a petition objecting to funding Open Choice and DEI consultant Ken Shelton in this budget. That's 951 people. That's a huge response in such a short period of time for a 2-issue petition. The petition simply states, we, the undersigned Darien residents and taxpayers, write to state our strong objection to the Open Choice Program that is being considered as part of the current budget process and to the hiring of DEI consultant Ken Shelton from California. We urge each of the members of the Board of Education to reject these expenditures from being included in the budget. A link to the petition can be found at Open Choice.
Mr. Dunn, I just said there is no conversation about a link to the petition, all right?
Excuse me.
So there is none. Thank you.
My apologies. While they have put forth many arguments based on emotion, have proponents of Hartford's Open Choice Program demonstrated the same level of community support? I believe the answer still remains a steadfast no. Open choice is the wrong choice for Darien. Continuing to work with Mr. Sheldon is the wrong choice for Darien. The board should listen to its constituents. Their message is clear. Do not fund these initiatives. It is the obligation of the board to vote for what our town is clearly indicating as its preference. Let's shift our focus to getting back to normal for the benefit of our children before even discussing these drastic changes to our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Amy Zerby, 9 Morehouse Drive. Schools exist for children. This statement is on the Board of Education page under educational philosophy in bold. Our children need us. Show the community that you care about our children. Please approve the transfer so that the district can hire Ken Shelton. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Anyone else from the audience? Thank you.
Good evening, Diane Urban, 10 Crane Road. Thank you to the board for your openness to hear all voices in the community and opportunity for public comment. Please vote to approve the budget transfer for DEI work and the selection of Ken Shelton as our DEI consultant for the next phase in this work. In July 2020, the Board of Ed received a powerful letter from recent graduates detailing the need for a DEI lens in Darien Public Schools. Over 260 community members signed on their call for action in the height of a pandemic without a social media campaign. Please remember the stories current students have bravely shared with us. Believe that there are many more, but when met with inaction, their voices are weary. The students have shared that they are losing hope in us adults, being left with the feeling that nothing will change. Sharing their verbal and written thoughts is enough. It shouldn't have to be a coordinated campaign. Their words alone should carry weight. But there could be change. Ken Shelton has begun this work with positive feedback from teachers and students. He brings a perspective that can help us think critically about where we've been, where we are, and where we could be. Shame is never the part of a DEI program. We can acknowledge the truth of the past, reflect, and work together so there is understanding, mutual respect, representation, and meaningful change. We are not responsible for the wrongs of the past, but we are responsible for what we do in the present. Mr. Shelton and the administration have assured us that his work is a collaboration with the community. Darien's families, the administration, and ultimately the Board of Education holds final authority over exactly what changes best suit the needs of our community. To echo what many concerned parents have shared, the pandemic has taken a toll on our kids. Stopping this work and restarting the process with an entirely new consultant would not only be counterproductive, but could cause undue strain and possibly break any trust students have in this process and vulnerability with their thoughts and experiences. Opposition is not just attributed to the administration's selected consultant. Community members have shared they are opposed to DEI in public comment, anonymous websites, and op-eds, many finding the concept of equity problematic and often equating any DEI effort with critical race theory and even Marxism. So if not Ken Shelton, any candidate who is truly a DEI consultant would be seen as flawed simply because examining equity is part of that role. Will we commit to diversity, equity, and inclusion? We are a group of also concerned parents committed to lifting the voices of kids who are struggling and to building a more inclusive community where all students feel safe to learn and thrive. There are gaps in our curriculum and policies. So by intentionally empowering our students with both the vision and fluency that reflect the world into which they will graduate, that's the only way to ensure we've provided them with a holistic, complete, and top-notch education. And that is what they are telling you they want. Isn't that what we all want? Let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Anyone else in the audience? Okay, once we go to Zoom, I'm not going to come back to the audience because then I'm not going to go back to Zoom. So we're done with the public for right now. We'll go to Zoom and then there's public comment at the end of the meeting. All right, good. Michelle, Zoom.
Yep. Crystal Hill, you are unmuted and recognized.
Crystal, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, I can.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Again, my name is Crystal Hill and I live at 10 Wakeman Road. I'm currently the PTO co-chair at Tokenique. However, this evening, I want to be clear that I am only speaking as a district parent. I wanted to address the proposed policy of bring your own devices at the high school. I'm a parent of 4 children in the Darien school system, and my oldest is currently in 8th grade. In speaking with a number of fellow 8th grade parents today, most of them are understandably not aware of this proposed change. Having listened to Mr. Cranberg's presentation in the board discussion yesterday, I completely understand the need to change the current policy of using iPads, issuing iPads to every student, and that having hundreds of iPads sitting on shelves unused is not being financially responsible to the taxpayers. My concern is with the process for providing these devices to students who need or want to continue to use the school-issued iPads. There currently does not seem to be a well-defined plan to communicate this change to parents and make selecting a district device an easy process. It seemed as if the plan for opting into using the school device would be opt-in by default, by simply showing up on the first day of school without a personal device. No parent wants to put their child in that position on the first day of high school. I feel like the request to parents of 8th graders, particularly those of us sending our oldest children to high school, is to make a significant decision and investment in technology without even understanding what our child's needs will be. Many families want time to understand the technology demands of the curriculum and their child's preferences before investing a large sum of money in a personal device. I think, like myself, most parents would opt in with the understanding that if we later purchase our own device, the school iPad would be returned for use by another current or incoming student. I also think as a community, we often take for granted that for a significant portion of our population, buying another laptop, MacBook, or iPad is a relatively routine purchasing decision. But we do have families, many of which may not meet the definition of being in need, that need to budget for these types of devices months in advance, particularly families that may have 2 or 3 high school students at any given time. I'm concerned that by the time this policy gets communicated to families in the spring, it may leave some families in a bind, particularly with the increased prices, shortages, and shipping delays we are currently experiencing. So in conclusion, I support a change in the current technology policy at the high school, but I also fully believe the district has a responsibility to provide a device which is vital for high school success to any student that requests one. I ask that the administration please undertake the proper planning to understand what the school-issued device demand will be and to make the opt-in process easy and accessible to all families. I ask that the board approve the technology budget that allows the district to succeed in making this transition. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening.
Erin Patterson, you are unmuted and recognized. You are still
Erin.
muted.
Erin, we can't hear you.
All right, gotcha.
There we go. Thank you. Name and address. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Erin Patterson. I identify as she, her, and I live at 251 Norotan Avenue. I have 2 children in the Darien school system. With their permission and disclosing, my 10-year-old, a 5th grader, has already experienced in school from peers the hate and distrust towards those who are different. This is not just a race issue in Darien. This is bigger and needs big ideas and big support to advance our thinking. None of us want our children to step into a classroom with fear. All of us want our children to feel safe and included. Our Darien community is strong, welcoming, and capable of inclusivity. The engagement of consultant Ken Shelton is not about forcing an ideology or embedding such ideology in curriculum. This engagement is about expanding awareness in our community, providing our incredible faculty and staff support and empowerment to navigate this unfamiliar and difficult territory, and for all to invoke thoughtful consideration and meaningful dialogue around what diversity, equity, and inclusion means in Darien. I'm strongly advocating for the transfer of funds to engage Ken Shelton in the development and implementation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion platform for the school district so that our entire student population, faculty, and staff is supported in the most inclusive way possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening.
Carolina Magooy, you are sorry. My screen went crazy. You are unmuted and recognized.
Carolina, can you hear us?
I can.
Good,
Carolina
go ahead. Thank
Magooy,
you.
28 Kensett. I've been trying to write this public comment most of today as a result of yesterday's special board meeting, and especially because of the public comment at the end. I was rather shocked to see how the narrative of us versus them played in almost all the comments against open choice. Another common thread against open choice has been that we need to focus on our students, the Darien taxpayers' children. I don't see how this effort would take from our kids. When my youngest joined Rockstridge, a family from Brazil had just moved here and their kids did not speak English very well. The youngest, which probably was in kindergarten, did not speak any English. My daughter, having just moved back from Brazil in second grade to the US and being a Portuguese speaker from our years abroad, helped translate for this child when needed. Fast forward a couple of years and you would have no clue that they did not speak English. The kids from Open Choice can eventually also be a resource for the excellent language program CPS offers our children once they're older. I have been in town 8 years. I do believe that the majority of people in town believe in the value of diversity in some way. We saw it during Pride Month. We saw it during the menorah lighting. We saw it when many of us walked during the Black Lives Matter protest. I hope we continue seeing more initiatives going forward. 10% of constituents signing a petition do not speak for the majority in town. We need to open our hearts and show that we as a town are willing to do better, that our reputation is no longer what it has been, and that we are working actively to change that we are indeed listening to our kids, and that we do want what is best for all of them. And that is to prepare them for the real world, where they will work with people from every walk of life. Giving our children exposure from a young age to people like them and not like them is a gift we are giving them, and one that we must do with kindness. Was that not all over town a few months ago? Lastly, I do hope that the transfer for Mr. Shelton's services gets approved by the full board. The DEI initiative must be embraced with open arms by everyone involved. We have children suffering in school and being victimized. That is unacceptable. Even one is unacceptable. We must move forward. We must trust that the administration has found the right candidate for our schools and our children. I've heard comments from teachers that I had workshops with him, with Mr. Shelton, that have said that it has been the most amazing and productive time spent. As someone said somewhere, we spent $40,000 in grass in Edgerton and nobody said a word. We can do this too with a much better outcome than just pretty grass. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Tiffany O'Connor, you are unmuted and recognized.
Tiffany, can you hear us? We can't hear you. There you go. Thank you.
Unmuted. Tiffany O'Connor, 48 Lewarden Road. In previous public comments this fall, I mentioned some of the high school students' hurtful experiences with discrimination and bullying. The parents had confided in me when I was a PTO co-chair for the high school last spring. They confided because they feared making things even worse for their children if they shared their experiences publicly. Sadly, this is a very real and substantiated fear, which I mentioned because I think we should keep in mind that these incidents are more prevalent than we can even know. Maybe it seemed like a few isolated incidents years ago, but we know now that in actuality, a few parents were brave enough to speak up about a problem that had been repeatedly swept under the rug. Now that Darien high school students have shared personal experiences with racism and homophobia publicly, and we have concrete evidence of threats on bathroom walls, social media posts, and swastikas found in the high school, middle school, and elementary schools, it's even more absurd to give any value to the ridiculous explanations of isolated incidents. I continue to worry about the students, the brave students who have shared their experiences, and those who do not speak up, but also endure hurtful words and behavior. And I also think about their parents. I still remember the director of my daughter's preschool in Charlotte, North Carolina, her words 18 years ago to a friend, a worried mom that I happened to be standing with. She said, "A mother is only as happy as her saddest child." This director was very professional, not overly emotional. She said it very matter-of-factly, and it seems to hold true at any age. So let's update and change the word mother to parent. And I'd love for you all to think how you feel when your child is hurting. And I don't mean the tears of disappointment that build resilience. That's different. Now imagine your child being a target of cruelty every single day you send them off to school, or they go to school, just because they are in some way different from Darienne's norm. I'm asking you, the board, to think like these parents, to try to put yourself in their shoes. But I'm asking you to take action as board members who are charged with the well-being of all of the students in our district. Some of you have explained that you are in favor of DEI, but just not of Mr. Shelton. But our schools need help now, and Mr. Shelton is already working with the students and teachers with very positive feedback. And more help is needed to create a respectful and safe environment for all of the students in the schools. This is the DEI training we need in our schools at this time. By supporting the budget transfer for Mr. Shelton, you are supporting our students now and helping to prepare them for the real world. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Anne Reed, you are recognized and unmuted.
Hi, Ann. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you
Great.
hear
Go
me?
ahead. Thank you, Ann.
Okay. The speech that I had written, Duke, was a response to last night, and you asked not to do that. So I am not going to read what I wrote originally, but I am going to echo the words of Carolina and Tiffany. They are saying what I believe, and I urge the board to support the DEI transfer. And I believe very strongly in open choice. And I think the behavior that I have seen in the comment section of the Board of Education shows me, and hopefully you, that this town needs this more than ever. Thanks so much.
Ann, thank you for speaking this evening.
And can we have your address, please?
Sure, 15 Libby Lane.
Thank you. Alicia Melberg, you are unmuted and recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Alicia. Thank you.
My name is Alicia Melberg, 24 Christie Hill Road. I have 2 elementary school students. I'm speaking tonight to ask you to unite as a board and reach out to our representatives and urge them to vote against extending Governor Lamont's emergency powers. Petition our representatives to end school mask mandates set by the governor and reassess our current COVID mitigation strategies based on local data. We're a thoughtful and educated community, capable of making important and necessary decisions, our own decisions. What parents like myself and my husband are asking for is nothing radical. Connecticut is one of only 12 states with mask mandates. Last summer, we saw COVID rates decline. Camps were open, kids were happy. And yet, despite Darren's low cases, we sent our kids to summer school with masks. When I reached out to our own state representatives on this matter, one response was, well, I don't have the numbers for Darien. Someone representing us did not know our numbers. This alone is reason enough to advocate for making our own decisions. If Darien is in a similar situation this summer with low COVID cases or none, will our children still be masked at school? We all acknowledge that our children's mental health has been affected by COVID risk mitigations, and it's time to do something about this. When are we going to start putting our youngest, our most vulnerable kids first? Speaking as the parent of a child with a diagnosed anxiety, the past 2 years have been challenging. The start of the year, we witnessed this anxiety as she approached a playground full of kids after a year of walking into a structured environment. Having to force a child through a school door is gut-wrenching. Fortunately, our team at home school was amazing, immediately put together a plan to help her. We are grateful to know she is supported in the school. She has a team that cares. We question if all of these supports would be necessary if we're back to at least a somewhat normal environment. Would things be different if she could see expressions on her peers' faces? Will our child ever have the confidence to walk into a crowded area alone? How can we best help her? Not forcing her to hide behind a mask would help. We have been told our children are resilient. This resilience has been tested for 2 years, and many have reached a breaking point. My husband and I have watched our oldest fall behind academically and emotionally. We have heard stories of kids who have headaches due to their glasses fogging up, the sneeze-in mask, the middle schooler who has felt the pressure, the high schooler who will look back wishing more could have watched them play in a game, students eating lunch alone and separated from their peers. If you question any of the negative effects of mitigation strategies, I invite you to walk with me and my children to school. Listen to our story. It's time to stop signaling to our children that they are threats, that schools are unsafe. We know our children better than anyone. At a minimum, let's give ourselves the option to make decisions for them. Please take the first step and lobby to our representatives to vote against Lamont extending his
You are
emergency
at time.
powers.
Thank you.
I hope to see toothless smiles in the future.
You're at time. Thank you very much. Thanks for speaking.
We have 2 users with the name Claudio. I will call Claudio's iPad first. You are unmuted and recognized.
Claudio, can you hear us? Looks like you're still muted. Can you hear us? Great. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I was going to start my comments tonight. Well, I'm sorry, first, Claudio Capella, 27 Wakeman Road. I want to just upfront say I'm against the open choice program and also against the services of Ken Shelton. I was going to start my little speech tonight by telling you a little bit about my background. I came from another country, and as a child, I didn't speak English. I learned how to speak English in the first grade. I was picked on because of that, so on and so forth, but it's all in the past. I think I've done pretty well for myself. Then I thought about, going into that story, and I think I'm going to not go into that because the reason I was going to tell the story was almost kind of try to justify my background so that I can justify my reasonings as well. I'm against the open choice, although I believe it is a noble idea. I just think right now for Darien, it's not a practical idea. It's just not the right time. I think we should reserve the seats in the schools that we have for our own students that we know for a fact over the next couple of years are going to grow. They have always been growing. And with a budget of $110 million, that's a lot of money to be spending on ourselves. And then to say, oh, well, wait, we've got so many free seats. So I really don't understand how that works. As far as Ken Shelton, again, the concept, the DEI, it's very noble. I like it. But as far as I'm concerned, acceptance, inclusion, being a good person, being polite, that should all be taught at home. It starts at home and it should be taught at home. At school, I send my kids there to learn science and math because I can't teach them that, but I can teach them how to be good people. I'm not a racist. I'm not a sexist. I'm not a bigot. Although some people might call me that just because I say I'm not for open choice or Ken Shelton, but that's ridiculous. And anybody who wants to come and have a conversation with me, I welcome that. There are reasons why I'm against some of these programs, and it's very simple. The Board of Ed and the administration teach our kids curriculum. I'll make sure that I send good people out into the world. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
James Palin, you are unmuted and recognized.
Jim, can you
Yes,
hear us?
me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks.
Hey, Duke. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Palin. I live on Hickory Lane. I'm the chair of the Darien Board of Finance. I'm a taxpayer, and I have 3 kids in our schools, and they have been for their entire school career. Members of our board have been actively following the Board of Education's review of the superintendent's budget. We've reviewed the budget books, watched your meetings online over the past few weeks, provided you with questions, and reviewed the numerous sets of Q&A that the admin has compiled. Thank you. That said, the Board of Finance's role as it relates to the school's operating budget is different than that of the town's budget and our capital budgets. It is not a line item exercise. Instead, our board's responsibility is to review the budget that is put forward by the Board of Ed and to then recommend an aggregate appropriation to the RTM that we believe will allow our schools to provide the services that they are required to provide and that our residents have come to expect. But at the same time, ensuring that those expenditures are prudent as it relates to Darien's long-term financial health and its overall level of taxation. Over the past few weeks, we have listened to the Board of Ed, the administration, the RTM, and the public actively discuss the budget. Those discussions have included everything from band uniforms to new initiatives such as open choice, new technology and groundskeeping, and changes to existing programs such as the one-to-one initiative. What we have not heard from the members of the Board of Ed yet is a discussion about the aggregate level of spending and what they believe is prudent in the long term. The current budget proposed by the superintendent requests an additional $4.2 million for the operating budget. That's 4% more than last year. This is on top of a 4% increase the prior year and is materially higher than the long-term guidance of 2.5% to 3% growth in our town-wide budgets that I included as part of my prepared remarks at the State of the Town in early December. In closing, I would ask the members of the Board of Ed to have a discussion and share their views on what they believe is a prudent and sustainable rate of growth in our overall annual education spending, with the assumption that there's no material change in the enrollment. Thank you all. I look forward to continuing to follow your discussions and receiving your formal Board of Ed recommended budget next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palin.
Laura Pesky Gray, you are acknowledged and unmuted. Miss Gray, you are still muted.
Can you hear us, Laura?
Yes. Can
Great.
you hear
Go ahead.
me?
Thank you. Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm at 131 Holmes Avenue. I think that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is critical to our town. I am saddened by hearing all of the speakers that have already spoken about children being victimized, bullied, and feeling unsafe. Yet Ken Shelton, I don't believe, is the answer and the solution to our problems. Mr. Tranberg, remember, do you recall in one of the BOE meetings that you said some people see social emotional learning as the foundation and DEI is the framework that's built on top of it? What if that is the way we should look at that and we should look at this picture? My point is that Choose Love program is those values that program brings to Darien and the communities and all over the country that have engaged in it is a wonderful foundation for our children. And I think that's what we need more than ever. The 3 core values: nurturing means loving, kindness, and gratitude. Number 2, healing means forgiveness. Number 3, love is compassion in action. Ken has been in our district for over a year. And while I've heard many of you say the wonderful results that he's been, like the feedback teachers have been giving, I don't see things improving in our town. Swastikas are still being found in bathrooms, on buses. Kids are still being hurtful to each other, and students are still speaking out and crying for help. Has the board seen a summary of findings and measurable results from Ken? What about a video of how he's interacting with our teachers and our students? Doesn't the administration have to present results to finance to justify this additional expenditure? And Mr. Tranberg, I know that this subject matter is messy, but that response is just simply not good enough. I'm sure that many of you think I'm a racist, similar to what Claudio said. I am not a racist, and I will take a minute to explain who my family, my first cousin is a lesbian, and we have an amazing close relationship. I have Mexican friends and Colombian friends. I even took my kids to the Bronx Zoo 5 years ago, twins. They were about 5 years old. They didn't want to go to the zoo. They wanted to go into the playground and play. We were the only white family in that playground. We actually participated. I asked if I could be part of their community Easter egg hunt, and we happily played, and we were thrilled, and we were the only people there that were white. So just to give you an explanation of—
Laura, you're at time. Thank you very much. Thanks for speaking this evening.
Rosine Beccarelli, you are unmuted and recognized.
Rosine, can you hear us? Looks like you're on mute.
I apologize. I'm
There you
here with
go.
my husband, Joe.
Good,
We're
go
at
ahead. Thank you.
29. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank
Okay,
you.
29 Bailey Avenue. We just wanted to agree with and echo all the comments from the parents ahead of us who beautifully articulated why diversity, equity, and inclusion work is vital in our town. Also that it's a very large effort. It's a long-term effort. It's a huge work in progress. It takes everyone getting on board and supporting it. There's going to be lots of questions along the way. Everyone understands that, or people can understand that. We understand that. But in general, we are supportive with the entire initiative, and we're thankful for the efforts the administration is putting forth for them. And we're in favor of voting to transfer the funds so that Ken Shelton can continue his work with the students for the reasons that you've heard from the students and from the other parents, and for open choice to move ahead as well. And anything else that comes up before the board with the ability to vote to move it forward, we hope that you will. We're strongly for it, and we thank you for your efforts.
Great. Thank you for speaking this evening.
Belinda Feng, you are unmuted and recognized.
Linda, can you hear
Feng,
us?
22 Beach Drive.
Thank you. Go
Good
ahead.
evening. The many acts of discrimination and racism that have shaken our school community have forced us to take a hard look at an escalating issue here in Darien. We need to re-examine our diversity, equity, and inclusion priorities. Our school administrators have stated they are in need of training and guidance. The longer we put off bringing in professional help, the greater the risk that we send our children unprepared and into a world that has dire consequences for ignorance and complacency. Last fall, a group of brave young women publicly recounted the abuse and discrimination they've quietly endured. Their words made a lasting impact on me. I wonder if they've done the same for you. Their testimonies were delivered in expectation of igniting real change, change that we all hope will take place in this lifetime in Darien. There's been a false narrative that DE&I work will detract from the educational experience, that it will put our district at a disadvantage and take resources away. This needn't be a matter of pitting achievement against DE&I. Dr. Adley has very clearly stated that this work will not have any influence or authority over curriculum. Our children are waiting to see how we will respond to their plea. And if the only response we give them is that the adults are fearful of moving forward because of baseless claims, then we must reevaluate how we measure perceived risk versus actual irreparable damage. Once we decide that the unimaginable loss of a young person's dignity is a price worth paying for an imagined ideal of privilege, the number of swastikas found on bathroom walls and derogatory slurs scribbled across classrooms cease to matter. We'd turn a blind eye to a whole nother generation of young people, send them into a downward spiral of questioning their right to be treated with decency, just to follow our need to do what we want, pursue misguided fear, and continue the cycle of enablement. From the moment they were born, we've promised our kids that if ever they are in distress, voice your concerns, seek help. Now is the time that we make good on those oaths that we took as leaders and parents and show them that their words did not fall on deaf ears. We need to stop letting irrational fears paralyze us into being bystanders of discrimination and racism. We need professional DE&I help. Members of the Board of Ed, I beg of you to please move forward in approving the transfer of funds for DE&I work to finally begin. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Claudio Capella, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, Pam Capella. Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Pam Capella, 27 Wakeman Road. I'm going to try to read fast. Thank you to the board for the time and energy you put in here. We know it's a lot of work and it's appreciated. We've lived in Darien for 18 years. I have 3 children in 3 different schools. We love our town. We moved here because of the proximity to New York City and the incredible school systems. But lately I'm saddened at what is happening here. The issues I oppose are numerous: open choice, Ken Shelton, BYOD. And why must we voice our concerns over Zoom? Why are we only allowing 14 residents to be in person at a Board of Ed meeting? Does anyone ask? We have a middle school play coming up this weekend. There will be over 140 people sitting in the auditorium to enjoy Cinderella, but we can't have more than 14 residents present at a Board of Ed meeting at such a crucial time. This just doesn't make sense. Main reason, though, for me speaking up tonight is about the mask mandate. Our children are still sitting in masks and socially distanced for 7 hours a day while the majority of our town is back to the new normal. Going to restaurants, parties, sporting events, plays. They are not able to take a sip of water at school without being reminded to mask up. My 3rd grade daughter sits alone at lunch with only one other boy. Her friends are all split up at other tables. You remember lunch when you were a kid, right? That is when we all got to take a break from school to chat and laugh. A teacher shouted at my middle schooler last week, "Put those masks back up over your noses. I have toddlers at home who can't get the vaccine. Are you trying to kill them?" This was said to 11 and 12-year-olds. My third grader looks forward to gym because the teacher's so nice and lets them have mask breaks so they can breathe. She's 8. She comes home every day with only her half-eaten snack. When I ask why she hasn't eaten the whole thing, she tells me because we only have 4 kids eating at one time. They only have a few minutes, but she doesn't want to rush because she doesn't want to choke. She's 8. As parents and educators, how are we allowing this to happen in our town? We are all meant to protect our kids first and foremost. As board members, you are the voice for our kids. I believe to date, this board has only sent 1 letter to Hartford about ending the mask mandate. If true, this is unacceptable. In the beginning of COVID, I followed every rule. I am a rule follower, but times and information have changed. We know masks don't work. The science is there. We've all seen it. COVID is now much less dangerous than it was in early 2020. So why are we still demanding these poor kids to be subjected to masks all day long? The psychological and social ramifications we all know are going to be far worse than what we can all imagine. What is this board doing to address our concerns? What is Dr. Adley doing to help our kids? How can we try to tackle topics like open choice and hiring a so-called diversity expert who knows nothing about Darien kids to teach Darien kids how to be better people when we have this currently happening? The mask issue needs to be addressed now. It's a sensitive topic, but we cannot be complacent any longer. We need to speak up before Governor Lamont is granted another extension, allowing him to tell us how to treat our kids. We cannot govern from fear. We need to speak for our children. We need to protect the well-being, physical, mental, and emotional state of our kids. I will go to any
Thank you.
lengths to
You
do
are
so.
at time. Thank you for speaking this evening.
Jesus said, take the wheel. Somebody in that room, please take this wheel.
Thank you.
Abigail Hornstein, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks. Abigail Hornstein, 17 Edmund Street. Good evening. I very much enjoyed the explicit presentation of budgetary information in your recent board materials. That transparency enables me to use applied financial economic tools to evaluate your proposed expenditures. Economists, both theoretical and applied, have developed tools to identify if the marginal projects facing an organization are actually good. These tools can be used to evaluate the proposed contract for Ken Shelton and Open Choice. The methodology is based on work done by James Tobin, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1981. Specifically, we use average and marginal Tobin's Q, which examine the ratios of market to replacement value. I've published 4 peer-reviewed papers, including a methodology one on marginal Tobin's Q, and I'm going to use that approach to evaluate these proposed expenditures for the town of Darien. It's actually hard to do that. It's hard to estimate the marginal Q for Ken Shelton's contract, but we can easily explore a quick counterfactual. If we don't hire him, what would we do? We'd invest more time, which comes at a cost when we look at district staff to investigate alternatives. If we walk away from Mr. Shelton, anyone else would now likely demand a cost premium to cover the increased hassle of dealing with what has now been shown to be a contentious district. Of course, staff might choose to leave too, and replacements may be of inferior quality and experience. Meanwhile, more time would elapse and problems would either stabilize at the current unacceptable level or get worse. After all, if they were going to improve on their own, we would not be talking tonight. And of course, the district will remain vulnerable to charges that students' civil rights are not protected due to the adverse climate in schools. I suspect but cannot prove that the marginal Tobin's Q of Ken Shelton's contract would thus be highly positive and substantially exceed the cutoff value. On the other hand, the board's materials gave the precise data to estimate the marginal Tobin's Q for the Open Choice program. Even if you argue that costs were underestimated, which seems unlikely given your board's high caliber, and that taxes should be estimated at the highest marginal tax rate ever paid by any U.S. taxpayer in history, the estimated marginal Tobin's Q would still be in excess of the tax-adjusted threshold. In short, there is no economic argument against Open Choice. Thank you for your time, and if you would like hyperlinks so that you can learn more about James Tobin, average Q, or marginal Q, let me know. I'm quite happy to resume my practice of emailing all of you. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Natasha Rose, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, I'm Natasha Tomei. I live at 6 McLaren Road South. I'm here to ask for a couple things, but most specifically mask choice. The data is there. Everybody is talking about it. And I have a child who is 7 years old who has apraxia. It is a neurological speech delay. It requires her to see people's mouths and to be touched while she's receiving therapy. The district has done a great job to try to accommodate this as much as possible, but she is not progressing. And so now I'm trying to be a speech pathologist and do homework with her at home. And it's actually not just SLP, it's like a special level of training. So that's just how it's affecting her specifically. I'm concerned about, the learning loss for her, being behind in reading. But it's really nonsensical to keep these kids in masks. Like, look at the data. It's just so clear. And I think that, teachers projecting through masks all day is also very difficult for them. So I'm asking you to take a really good hard look at that and see if that's what's the best thing for our district. I also want to ask the question back. I heard some inconsistency last night in the language between appropriate and reasonable. And I think in a memo, it might have said appropriate, where I think in the legislation, it says reasonable. So I'd ask the board to take a look at that when we're talking about reimbursements for special ed students that are coming from outside the district. I think that I also heard the word litigation at a former board meeting that, there wasn't any litigation from Granbury. So the word reasonable, I think, is only determined if there is, in fact, litigation. So, let's take a look at that. And lastly, on, Ken Shelton, I haven't seen a smoking gun that Ken Shelton's a bad guy or that there's something, really, really wrong with him at all. But what I do wonder about is I haven't seen much from him at all other than a 30-minute presentation. And so the person who's going to be tasked with helping our teachers should be providing a curriculum, should be providing something. That is what educators do. They provide something detailed and they give it to you. It doesn't give the teachers enough to people are scared everywhere. Teachers are scared, parents are scared to speak their minds, kids are scared. Okay, we need a peacemaker. Let's make sure. I think that with the technology stuff, I'm concerned about I think a lot of this stuff is coming from outside the district, this hate, it's coming from YouTube and pranks on YouTube and pranks on TikTok and all of that other stuff.
You are at time. Thank you very much. Appreciate you speaking this evening.
Jessica's iPhone, you are unmuted and recognized.
Jessica, can you hear us?
Yep, I
Great.
can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Jessica Murphy, 22 Old Farm Road. Dear members of the Board of Ed, I come here tonight as a concerned mother. I'm imploring you to please advocate for us in Hartford to drop the statewide mask mandates and send this jurisdiction back to our local communities. I also am here to urge you to move to a mask choice program in our Darien schools. We now know that COVID poses very little threat to our children, yet here we sit 22 months into this pandemic and our children are still being forced to spend most of their day in a mask. As the virus gets less dangerous, our restrictions on these poor kids tighten. What you may not appreciate is the emotional trauma this is causing them. You may think it's no big deal. What does it matter? Kids are resilient. They don't complain. But this is where you're wrong. I'm here to tell you firsthand that forced mask wearing for the entire school day has to stop. Our kids are suffering. They're suffering in silence, mostly because the adults around them are forcing them and shaming them and scaring them into silence. They're suffering because they don't feel like they have any other option. They're hopeless, they're depressed, and the joy in their lives at school has ceased to exist. My family moved to Darien in 2020 because we heard such amazing things about the schools in this community. We have 4 children and every single one of them has been changed because of these masks. They've had their own struggles. From my 12-year-old to trying to navigate the tumultuous middle school years in a new school, not being able to read anyone's facial expressions, Was that a welcoming smile from someone that may want to be my friend, or was it a scowl? Let me be the first to tell you, being in middle school and only seeing someone's eyes for 22 months is torture. He spent the entirety of sixth grade at a lunch table by himself. My 11-year-old has finally broken as well. He's depressed. He does not ask to play with friends anymore. He comes home, he keeps to himself. He's afraid to put himself out there and ask a friend to come play because he has not seen their face for so long. He can't read their expressions to know if they're friends or foes. The smallest, slightest movement in your face can make a world of difference. He's gone from a happy-go-lucky, smiley kid to someone who's scared, anxious, depressed. He routinely tells me that he hates his mask at school and often no longer wants to go to school. And then my 3-year-old. Could you imagine seeing a 3-year-old go to nursery school in a mask? It breaks my heart. Since turning 3 in December and being forced to wear his mask throughout the school day, he suddenly no longer wants to go to school. Every morning he says, "Mommy, I'm scared. Mommy, I'm nervous. Mommy, I don't want to go today." Do we think this is a coincidence? I don't think so. Maybe not being able to see people's faces and having his face covered all day has shattered his confidence and taken the fun out of school. And then there's my 7-year-old. She's a joy to be around, a true spark, but even her spark has dimmed over the last 2 years. She was a confident leader who didn't care what others thought before COVID. Now she's also nervous not to have her mask on if everyone else around her is wearing it. She's afraid of getting in trouble. She wants to be just like everyone else. Are these the lessons we want to teach our children?
Your time is up. Thank you.
Claudia, you are unmuted and recognized.
Claudia, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Claudia Ebert, 1 Sherry Lane, Darien. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I'd like to speak against the mask mandate in our schools. I have 4 children, 1 in 3rd grade, 1 in 2nd grade, 1 in 1st grade, and a preschooler. My older 3 attend Oxridge Elementary. Given the COVID statistics by now, this is a virus that we're going to have to learn to live with. The CDC says cloth masks are useless. The World Health Organization is against masking our youngest learners. Over half of the rest of the country has already moved on. Kids in many other states for over a year now have been able to attend school without a mask. In Connecticut, we're living in a Groundhog Day nightmare, where masks have become a form of control, a source of division, and an underhanded way to maintain federal funding. My kids have all told me that our school has not provided mask breaks to them this year. My 9-year-old daughter's told me it's so bad when she has to run for PE that it feels like her face is burning or the mask covers her and she can't breathe. Where is the compassion for our children? Where is the empathy? What adult in a position of leadership allows for this child abuse? Our children are spending 7 hours a day in a mask and are expected to learn, concentrate, exercise, and socialize with half of their face covered for 2 years. There's an atmosphere of anxiety and hypervigilance throughout our elementary schools where our children are supposed to feel comfortable and safe. Instead of focusing on which students are learning the material, teachers and administrators are focused on which kids are wearing their masks improperly. Stop hurting our children under the guise of safety and end this absurdity. Allow parents to choose what is best for their child. I ask that our Board of Education reach out to Hartford now, demand local control on masking before Lamont's emergency powers vote takes place on February 9th. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Kate Pace, you are recognized and unmuted.
Kate, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, Kate Pace, 11 Scout Trail. I'm joining to say I'm strongly in favor of the transfer of funds to engage Ken Shelton in the DEI work in the district. I'm also supportive of moving forward with open choice. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
User Bill's iPhone, you are recognized and unmuted.
Can you hear us?
Now I can. Sorry, you know me. I'm not that good at this.
Great. Go ahead. Thank you.
Bill Lennox, 1 Siwanoy Road. I'm against hiring Ken Shelton. I'm against the open choice program. We've laid out why the costs and the implementation are either onerous or impossible for our town at this time. But a personal example, speaking to what other parents have spoken to tonight, I lived in Norwalk for 12 years before moving to Darien recently. So under the open choice program system, I'd be considered to bring diversity to Darien since 2006. But now that I've moved 2 miles, I don't. I don't think that makes any sense. This program is poorly thought out and even more poorly budgeted. But separately, 4 grammar schools are using trailers, and we have excess capacity, I'm told. My 9-year-old eats lunch in a hallway. My 11-year-old eats lunch in a gymnasium. My 6-year-old eats at a table for 2 for lunch when his table partner is there. When his table partner is out of school, he eats alone. Think of your 6-year-old eating lunch alone during the only time of the day he's allowed to take his mask off, and then explain to me again how you're putting our children first. Children coming home crying and traumatized are not the sign of a properly functioning Board of Education. Think of this. The iPhone I'm talking to you on right now has face recognition technology built by the smartest people in the world. It opens when I look at it with a hat and sunglasses. It doesn't open when I wear a mask. But our babies never see a face from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. We have many issues with our schooling environment, and adding a DEI consultant or more children from other towns doesn't solve them. Bringing on proposals for DEI consultants or open choice demonstrates the board may have lost the thread. I ask the board to reassess what our priorities are right now. I'd also like to echo Claudio's comments earlier. It's the job of parents to raise good children. It's the school's job to teach math, science, reading, and writing. Bullying and bigoted behavior is disgusting and should be met with harsh discipline. And if these actions continue, parents need to address it directly rather than outsource it to Ken Shelton or anyone else in the administration. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
I missed your last name, sorry.
Lenich, L-E-N-I-C-H.
You appreciate it.
Jeff Montero, you are unmuted and recognized.
Can you hear us, Jeff?
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, I'm at 19 Whaling Road. Thanks for taking the time this evening. Given the emotional and developmental burdens we all recognize that masks place on our children and the fact that it poses little risk to their health, I'd like to ask that our superintendent and board help us chart a path to where our children are no longer forced to wear masks in school. You can hear the frustration from parents on this call and in our town and across our state. Governor Lamont and the legislature in Hartford are not best positioned to make this decision on behalf of our kids. Will our local leaders please start to advocate on behalf of our children? Our calls and emails to Hartford are nothing without your support. Please, I encourage you to reach out to our legislature and department heads in Hartford to make sure they are aware that the parents, students, and teachers have had enough of these ineffective protocols. Also, in speaking with parents in other towns, we understand the governor's mandates have room for interpretation. Given our understanding of COVID has evolved, can we reevaluate our mitigation strategies and try to make things normal for our kids in the meantime? Our children are depending on you to do what's right here. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
User Joanna's iPad, you are unmuted and recognized.
Joanna, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Joanna Zatani, Hollow Tree Ridge Road. Much to my disappointment, Lamont is asking for an extension of his executive order, which includes masking in school. We're almost 2 years into this pandemic and have learned a lot about COVID. It's not going anywhere, and we need to learn to live with it. Cloth masks provide little prevention and transmission. Children's health is minimally affected by this virus. The psychological and developmental effects of wearing masks are troubling. Adults are able to attend sporting events, social events, plays, and restaurants without masking. Why is it that anyone would think it is okay to still mask children at school? I'm asking for you to stand up to Lamont against extending the executive order by requesting local control. If Lamont's order is to pass, there are changes we can make in our schools to lessen the burden of our kids. Stop separating kids at lunch, get rid of social distancing, stop opening windows in frigid temperatures, and end any other ridiculous measures the schools have implemented. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Carolyn Burns, you are unmuted and recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Burns. I live at 4 St. Nicholas Road, and I just want to thank the board for opening the floor because obviously we all have a lot to say. And I have a 4-year-old son at Royal Elementary School in ELP, and he has been in a mask for half of his life. half of his life. It's hard to think, but you really have to let that sink in. It's crazy. And he has speech and language obstacles that have proven hard to overcome with these restrictive masks and cloths over their faces. And just like most other parents joining tonight, I'm worried that if we don't put an end to these school mandates, it will forever change the way that these kids speak, think, socialize, and live. And while I've been writing our legislators and governor every single day, I really urge you to speak out on behalf on a local school level and encourage them to end these mandates. Are you an advocate or are you compliant? I think we have a right to know. Make it our choice on how to best protect our families. Because of these masks and these school mandates, my son and so many other children quite literally do not have a voice. Well, we are their voice now and we demand to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Jessica Nichols, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, yes. I am Jessica Nichols from 18 Stony Brook Road. I have 2 children in preschool, one who will be entering kindergarten next year. I didn't plan to speak tonight, but I feel compelled to do so. We moved to Darien from New York City 3 years ago. And I remember visiting this town and I appreciated that it was a beautiful town and it would likely be a nice place for our children to grow up. That said, we've always had many friends, very close friends from all backgrounds. My husband recently went to grad school in New Haven, and our group of close friends, we all called each other, the United Nations. And we also have immediate family from various countries whose skin tone is different than ours. And I'm not showing my video, but I'm white. We have noted friend after friend who has visited us has made comments about feeling like the only one who looks like them in our town. Many friends who could very much afford to live in Darien, but would never do so. Our best friends who wanted to move out of the city, his wife is Vietnamese. His wife said to us that she would never feel comfortable moving to Darien because she would worry that her children would feel like the only ones here. I think this decision to hire Ken Shelton is very much symbolic. It's symbolic in the fact that, it's now been publicized throughout town that we're considering working with a diversity and inclusion specialist. And to then say that we are not going to go forward with that, to me, sends the wrong message. Clearly, it's time for our town to step up and start moving in the right direction on this topic, and to show that we have open arms to people who don't look like us. So that's my opinion, and I really wanted to share that tonight. I also would like to note that I also agree with what many people have been saying regarding the masks and having them removed from our children. I personally do not mind wearing the mask, and I wear my mask to protect others. But at the same time, my 5-year-old and 2.5-year-old, it's been 2 years now that they're wearing their masks. And I think that the time is up for especially the young children to be wearing masks at school. Thank you.
Thanks for speaking this evening.
Connor Godfrey, you are unmuted and recognized.
Go ahead, Connor. Can you hear us?
Hi, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Connor Godfrey, 1 Red Mill Lane. I'll be fairly brief. I just want to say I completely agree with the Capellas, with the Leniches, with the Monteros, and many others who have spoken tonight. As I'm sure most people are aware, I am against open choice for the reasons that have already been discussed. I'm against the continued consultancy of Ken Shelton for the reasons that have already been discussed, and no, that doesn't make me a racist. That accusation is both intellectually lazy and dishonest. Those of you that profess to support DEI, unless of course it's diversity of thought or inclusion of anyone that may disagree with you, are hypocrites. But I want to speak about the mask mandate. And in that regard, I would simply submit that this is the first time in history we have sacrificed the mental well-being of our youngest generation for the perceived safety and fears of our older generation. We should be ashamed of ourselves. The rest of us go to dinners, gather in groups, hang with our friends, go to sporting events. Why is it that we can do all those things in relative normalcy, yet our children are masked in school all day long? It's disgraceful. Our children's freedoms don't end where the misguided fear of others begins, and we should all do better. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Willie Bruno, you are unmuted and recognized.
Mr. Bruno, we can't hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Will Bruno, 81 Linden Ave. Thank you guys for your time. I am a DPS special ed paraprofessional and a Darien parent. I've seen firsthand the negative effects masking has on our students' social, emotional, and general learning skills. They cannot read our facial expressions and learn social cues. They cannot effectively hear us and follow directions, and none of this is their fault. Not only is this negatively affecting our students, but as educators, it's troubling to watch our kids suffer and exhausting to have to constantly repeat ourselves and reinforce policies many of us do not support. There have been countless studies on the effectiveness of masks conducted by highly reliable peer-reviewed sources. For example, Annals of Internal Medicine, National Institute of Health's National Library of Medicine, and the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, just to name a few. These studies all conclude that masks are ineffective at stopping the spread of COVID-19. Darien Public Schools has written one letter to our state government for more local control of masking. One letter. Why are we refusing to fight for our kids? The fact that my 17-month-old daughter knows the word mask and attempts to put one on her face breaks my heart. This is a skill I pray she will never need to develop. Thank you.
Thanks for speaking this evening.
Kathleen Thompson, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to reiterate some of the sentiments tonight. I would like to ask the board to please advocate for Darien children to become unmasked. I think what was said tonight, Connecticut is one of 7 states that have masking of children under 5 years of age. Connecticut is only one of 12 states in the US still with mask mandates. And, Governor Lamont using our children as pawns to get federal funding is just not okay. And I ask all of you to please reach out on behalf of our kids to ask the governor to not resume on his emergency powers. Thank you.
Ms. Thompson, can we have your address, please?
Sure, 53 Goodwise River Road.
Thank you.
Krista Carnes, you are
So, Michelle, I'll just pause here for a second since we've gone beyond an hour in public comment, which we're happy to do because we want to hear and listen. I would reiterate that there is a recurring theme here, masks and some of the things that are on discussion, and I appreciate that. We also have staff here that have to travel home, and we've got an agenda ahead of us. We want to continue to listen, but if you have an opportunity to agree with what's been said around masks and the other topics, we appreciate you shortening that and agreeing with it, but we're also happy to listen. I just wanted to give that reminder out. Thank you. Krista, go ahead if you can hear us.
Okay, hi, Krista Carnes, Fitch Avenue. I would like to reiterate my support for Ken Shelton DEI. I think teaching academics requires teaching a full breadth of history, and how would we teach our girls about women's rights and suffrages without looking at another person's perspective? How would we teach civil rights movement from the 60s without looking at it? And we need to bring it current. I do not feel that if we embrace this or don't embrace this, that anybody is being racist necessarily, and to put that on people for just disagreeing with you seems disingenuous and quite frankly sort of immature. I would also say for the mask cohort here, Darien is receiving $6.4 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. They're having a meeting tonight. It can be dedicated towards mental health and education related funding. So you maybe want to make your interests there known, and there's ways to help mitigate this situation as we move forward. But for the board, Godspeed. And I hope you make the decision to include diversity, equity, inclusion in our curriculum.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking this evening.
Elizabeth Wilder, you are unmuted and recognized.
Elizabeth, can you hear us? I think you're on mute, Elizabeth.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, I'm at 21 Ridgeview Avenue, and I just wanted to voice my support for the DEI program. I think it's absolutely critical in this town in particular, having lived here since 2008 and having been raised in Greenwich. I absolutely see the need for it. And also being the parent of two Latinx children. And I also wanted to voice my support for the transfer of funds for Ken Shelton. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking this evening.
Armel Jacobs, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
I'm Armel Jacobs, 12 Fitch. I want to echo the comments of Diane, Erin, Catherine, Rosine, Belinda, Tiffany, Abigail, Carolina, Kate, Jessica, and Elizabeth. I am in support of the transfer to continue Ken Shelton's work and any further DEI efforts that come before you guys, including open choice. I want to say that Westport has been enrolled in open choice for something like 30 years or something like that. I want to also say that Greenwich has a diversity advisory committee that has been active for decades. Darien is lagging behind. We are behind our peers. We are behind the world on these issues. Jessica said she had an acquaintance who said, "Oh no, I don't want to move there because, I don't want my kid to feel ostracized." Everybody has a story like that. But what has been suggested to me also is the converse, which is that there are people who move to Darien because it is somehow uniquely resistant to some of these inclusive measures. I find it to be such an ugly thought. And the optimist in me is like, no. But then, meeting after meeting, I hear some of these voices and some of these stories and what people are advocating against. And I wonder. So my message now is for, I think this is the way of the world. We're going to get there. I hope that this board does the right thing. And I'll speak that, I'll manifest that. So assuming when you guys do this, I want to just say a quick word to the parents who will have children coming in. Don't be discouraged. A petition of 900 in a town of 20,000. Don't be discouraged by some of what you're hearing here. There are so many of us that would welcome your children, that would want to have your children in a classroom with ours. So, don't be too discouraged. We're going to work on ways of making our kindness more visible. So we can do what Jessica said and send a message that we're ready to stop lagging behind. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking this evening.
Aparna Sagal, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Aparna Saigal and I'm dialing in from 7 Phillips Lane. I'm in favor of transfer of funds to Ken Shelton and in support of DEI and the Open Choice program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking.
There are no more raised hands at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you all that have spoken, participated, and we will have public comment at the end of the meeting. So much appreciated. Thank you. We will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Adley.
Yes, I certainly can make this brief. Good luck to our high schoolers today and today they were, and tomorrow their last day of exams. Thursday is makeup, and the third quarter starts on Friday. Marilyn Flynn, the special education consultant, was meeting with our elementary APs today and with our principals, continuing the feasibility study for co-teaching at the elementary school. That is scheduled for a board presentation to receive that report in May. Royal, fifth grader, Will Moore, Will actually release an original song called Free. It's on Spotify, Pandora, and Amazon Music. So congratulations to Will. I look forward to listening to that. The Homeschool Kids Care Club participated in sharing well over 1,000 books with students at a fellow school in Bridgeport. So we thank them for reaching out to our neighbours. Middlesex, as you heard this evening, actually a little bit, there is the Middlesex Cinderella, which is Thursday and Friday, and then there's 2 shows on Saturday. If you get an opportunity to participate and go support the arts. We will be extending some of the spectator capacity. We'll talk about that momentarily. The curriculum committee meets on Thursday morning. Thank you to the board members for representing our board with our legislators tomorrow. We have a number of board members who are traveling with us, so thank you for that. And just a reminder, the public hearing on the budget is in February 1st, next Tuesday. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. We'll move to approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the following: minutes of the regular meeting held on January 11th, 2022, minutes of the special meeting held on January 18th, 2022, and minutes of the special meeting held on January 24th, 2022. May I have a motion, Mr. Maroney? That is seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to any board committee reports. Mr. Zini.
The Finance Committee met, I'm looking up the date, I think it was Friday, January 21st. There's a number of transfer requests from the administration that I'll wait till we go through Rich's presentation to address. But there was one item that we wanted to cover, and which we covered at our retreat, which was the Special Education Reserve Account. We discussed that at length. I know a number of you were either here in person or watching the meeting, so I'm not going to go in great detail unless you have questions. It was something we discussed at the retreat. It's a special reserve account controlled and basically was formed, I believe, by the Board of Finance. It hasn't been used in over a decade. The Board of Finance has requested to us if we have a view related to the special reserve account. And I believe our committee's recommendation of the board is it's really not our account. After the retreat, I think we were supposed to send some email communication, and that might not have happened, but I would just recommend to the board that we have Dr. Adley on our behalf send an email to the Board of Finance and basically outline the fact that it's their account. They can do what they want to with it.
Thank you, Mr. Seen. We can have further discussion on that when we go to finances. Mrs. Ockman. Yes. Yep.
The policy committee met and we will go through the policies reviewed this evening. I would just like to flag we're scheduled for a meeting February 9th. I anticipate that meeting to change, just given a review we need from attorneys and the fact that it is directly after our budget night. So it may not if Marge and I can sync everyone up, but at this moment, it looks like we may need to change that date, and I'll get that out to the policy committee members. We have a first read of policies tonight, and we will do that later on the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoffman. Any other committee reports? Good. We will move on to Darien Public Schools update. Dr. Adley.
Well, I'm glad to report that we're on a good trend. Our cases have reduced and are dropping. I would like to, I don't know if Emily is on, but Emily Merritt is currently acting as our COVID compliance officer, and she will be fulfilling that role for a period of about 6 weeks. Emily is the nurse over at the home school. Emily, are you on? Just you may just say hello to the board in your new capacity. I don't know if you are, but
there she is. Hi, Emily. You're on mute. Thank you, Emily.
Hi. Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for stepping into the role and for all that you've been doing as part of the healthcare team. Thank you.
Absolutely.
so we'll just touch upon a couple of aspects today. This is the state of the state, so to speak. And this gives you the case, a summary of the cases. I think currently today we had 9 cases, 8 of them were vaccinated, but those numbers, as you can see here, continue to drop significantly. These are from the town. So they're consistent in sort of, did I turn that off? Sorry. So just a couple of matters regarding COVID. ELP, we will be at the end of this week reinstating the 5 days. There was a wee bit of an outbreak, so to speak, but I think we were able to reinstate those 5 days quarantine for the start of next week. The testing. So the testing, we sent out a survey for if you want to be tested, a PCR test, the company would come, diagnostic company would come, and you could be part of that. So it was open to all students, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. So parents have signed up accordingly. We'll be doing it also at the middle school and the high school. I think it's February 2nd is the start date at the high school. So parents have taken advantage of that. Test kits and masks. We were delivered nearly 6,000 of test kits and 6,000 of masks. So it seems that we got a request today for more. Or did we want more? I'm not so sure that we will be putting in a request for more, because at this point we seem to have plenty. Certainly over at the town hall, I don't think that there's a rush for vaccinations or other clinics. So at this point, I think we're well stocked. Regarding the spectator, we discussed this with our medical team today. We're going to move. If you remember, we went back to basically two parents. We're going to go reverse a little bit up to at least 50% capacity. So that will allow more, obviously, participants and spectators and community members at different events. Lunches, I think we'll take a look at the end of the week. Lunches, just at the space and the social distance. If you remember, we went back. We increased the space across the district. Won't say across the district, not necessarily at the high school, but across the rest of the district for 6 feet. Maybe something that if the pattern plays out and continues in this way, that could be something that we could consider and having a discussion with our medical advisors on. But the basic essence of the picture is a good picture as you're experiencing it yourselves, probably in your households and so on. Seems now that everybody's either had it or, well, maybe had it, I don't know. But it's a good sign. So for that, we're certainly grateful and hopeful.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Adley. With respect to the updating COVID, I'll open up for board questions. Mr. Maroney.
If and when the governor's executive order expires early next month, how soon would we be able to go mask-free in schools?
Well, I think we've been pretty adept at changing courses along the way. So as soon as a pattern changes or a executive order changes or permission changes, we could make a change pretty quickly. There would be some guidance probably will come with that. So I would assume well, I won't make the assumption, but perhaps we have to meet with the medical team. Is it a local decision or is it just we don't have to do it? Depends what he says. But I think we would react pretty quickly to changing circumstances depending on what they are.
So before we continue, because maybe there's some information you can shed. So in your weekly calls, or sometimes those weekly calls aren't weekly, any updates from those weekly calls from what superintendents are pushing or advocating for up at the state level?
I think what the superintendents, just generally speaking, were pushing for at the time was the contact tracing to have some relief from that. Those things actually happened. I think the weekly ones that I'm on, that the State Department of Education and the Department of Public Health are pretty much on the same trajectory as they've always been, and being very, very conservative, to be honest.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. Mrs. Oconnor.
So I originally raised my hand for a different question, but I heard a lot tonight that we should talk to Governor Lamont, or as Mr. Maroney was saying, what about Governor Lamont? I understand we're under executive order, but our mandate to put masks on comes from SDE, correct? So even if Governor Lamont releases his executive order and SDE says that our kids need to be masked, we have to be masked. So I wonder if we just make sure if anyone wants to advocate or if voices need to be heard, we make sure it's heard in the right place. SDE currently controls our masks, correct?
Yes, and the Department of Public Health, yes.
Thank you.
So
My
just
real-
for,
my
just because sometimes we get into acronym craziness, so that's the State Department of Education.
Yes.
Just so
Sorry.
everyone's clear on that. No problem. So, but to the point of the mask mandate may go away from an executive order standpoint, but the State Department of Education could provide guidance around masks, correct?
It could, but it'll probably, I could see it taking the lead from the Department of Public Health.
Okay.
So my other question, and it was more local, was that we heard a lot tonight about kids eating lunch alone. Do we have kids eating lunch by themselves?
So I would actually have to look into individual cases there because kids eat, kindergarten kids eat within 6 feet of each other, right? That may be to all intents and purposes being perceived to be alone. I'm unaware that we're actually eating alone per se.
So it is concerning to hear that. So I guess the reason why I ask, and I understand it's administrative, but I guess I would ask maybe that the administration look into that. I do think as young kids eating by themselves, I can understand that feels isolating. Maybe we could check and make sure that kids have peers, that they're having some downtime.
Yeah, we definitely did go back to 6 feet spacing. We definitely did that, and that certainly for younger children made all intents and purposes be alone, but I understand the question. Yes.
Okay. We could
Thank
just
you.
check in.
Mr. Brown.
Thanks, Duke. A couple things. One, following up on Dennis's point, I know we don't know what's going to happen with Governor Lamont. And I would imagine it will trickle down to some degree through, State Department of Health based on what he decides. I guess what I'm just wondering is if they decide to extend the mandate, I don't know if this should be an agenda item or how we should proceed, but could we reach out to council and maybe get briefed what would happen if we refused? And what would the legal ramifications be on that? And again, maybe that should be an executive session or an agenda item, but I'd be curious to explore the contours of that. Second item I'd like to bring up is we did do one letter previously. And I had mentioned this a few weeks ago. We put it off because we had till February. I'd like to propose maybe we should draft another letter from this board. That would be the second item, and I throw it for discussion. Then I'd like to make a motion. I can do that now or do it later.
I have a line item here once we get this update to see if there's a motion to amend the agenda and go to that conversation.
Okay.
So we'll finish with that. We'll finish with this conversation and then move to that. But thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Senior.
Alan, we've heard some also comments about uneven mitigation efforts within the schools or from elementary to elementary school. Do you work with the administrators to find the best practices for, that age level so that we have common standards there? That's the first question. And your efforts at the state level and amongst your peers has been pretty remarkable through this with the state screen and stay. And, you have a great way of influencing and hearing what's out there. Is there a best practices discussion among school districts in these non-pharmaceutical mitigation factors and operating the schools that you're part of also?
So I think I'd recognize the parents of the concern about the maybe perceived, like, where are we with all these mitigation strategies? Because in actually trying to be reactive to some of the new metrics, it seems that we're just changing and changing. So I think some of it will come from that. Honestly, the mitigation strategies are talked about every single Tuesday, every single time that the week they have that meeting about the mitigation strategies, the flexibilities that they extend. We are taking advantage of.
Okay.
So we do that. But a lot of the mitigation strategies still come as recommendations through addendums 5, 6, 3, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 actually as well. So they're still in place, and the State Department of Education are still requiring some of those. So where there's flexibility, you can be rest assured that the district is actually, where it makes sense to do so, utilizing and taking advantage of those flexibilities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sini. Mrs. Worm.
I have a question, but first I just wanted to, back to Mrs. Ockman's. I don't think it's that kids are necessarily set to eat alone. From the feedback I've gotten is that it's 2 kids at a table, and then if somebody's sick or out, the other kid unfortunately ends up by themselves. So that's where the eating alone comes in. Wasn't set up that way, I would say. But my question about the 50% capacity, is that split up between families or is it a first come, first served situation? I know there's,
Well, I think
coming up, like that could be an
the
issue.
parents will be able to participate. There will be a sign up for students. So that is worked out through the athletic department. So that'll be sent out of the nature of, I think it's like 75 students in certain locations type thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Any other questions or comments from the board? So with that, before we move off the topic of the update in masks, Mr. Brown, would you like to make a motion?
So I guess I'm not,
Would you like to make a motion to amend the agenda to discuss sending a letter up to Hartford?
I would like to make that motion.
Okay.
And I have another after it, but we can take them in sequence if that works.
Okay, let's do that one first. Do I have a second? Mr. Sini, all in favor of amending the agenda to have that discussion? That is unanimous. Thank you. I forwarded to the board earlier the letter that we sent out on August 12th, which basically summarized our thoughts on getting back to more local control. And our goal was to return to school on August 30th with conditions as close to normal as possible. That letter was sent by myself and Dr. Adley to Governor Lamont, Deirdre Gifford, Acting Commissioner, Connecticut Department of Health, Miss Charlene Tucker, Acting Commissioner, Connecticut State Department of Education, and Dr. Matt Carter, epidemiologist at the Connecticut Department of Public Health. We also copied our State Representative Blumenthal, our Senator Duff, our Senator Miller, and our State Rep Wood. We're all copied on that. So a little more background on this. Mr. Brown reached out to me and through connections was speaking to some fellow board members in New Canaan. I reached out to the New Canaan chair. We have not connected yet. They are going through the thought process of sending out a letter. And one of the comments was if we had any interest in potentially sending out a joint letter. So that is something that was brought up. I have not heard back from her yet, but have a call into her. So, but I think more importantly, based on feedback we've heard this evening, just a board conversation, and I think time is of the essence in terms of updating this letter. There was someone brought up the fact, should it go to Lamont versus should it go to the State Department of Education or the Connecticut Department of Health, of course, copying the governor, but I'll open it up to board thoughts around this letter, and then we'll, if the consensus is to move forward with a letter, we'll figure out how to get the letter updated or amended and out circulated to the board so that we can get it up there as quick as possible. So I'll open it up to comments. Mrs. Parent.
I'm not opposed to sending a letter to the appropriate powers that be. Before sending it, I would like to have a discussion with our medical team just to get their input on it.
Okay.
I don't know if we're prepared to do that tonight. I doubt they are, but.
What would you be looking for in terms of input from the
Just that
health
this
professionals?
is the right decision, that they're comfortable if this comes down to a local decision, that they're comfortable making that decision.
Dr. Adley, anything you want to add to that?
No, other than just that was the same sort of situation for the last communication. So I think that at that level, they would be, if they were granted that permission, I think they would. I'm speaking for them now, I shouldn't be, but that's the same conversation that we had before last time.
The previous letter we sent references them, and I just want to make sure that
Right,
they're
right.
comfortable.
So we would go down that same path. I don't know if we need a board conversation
Yeah.
versus just an update to the board that we reached out to our health professionals. Further board comments or questions? Anything would like, Mr. Brown?
I would just say change the dates and let's get it up as quick as possible.
Is that,
I mean,
go ahead, Mr. Sini.
to your point, there are some mitigating factors because I think we referenced a guy, I forgot what that document was called, and that document has been changed.
Yeah, right.
No longer exists. So make sure you edit that out.
Connecticut
But-
Department of Public Health, town level COVID
Yeah,
response
and
framework.
you know, you have the right address these.
Okay.
I mean, I don't care. Governor Lamont is like, that executive order is really driving a lot of the decision making. It's pretty clear of that. So
So if there's been any changes to these departments and some of these folks are acting, we'll make sure we have all the correct people on here and all our representatives and senators. as is the last time Dr. Adley and I worked on this. So we'll work on any updates and circulate it back out to the board and then get it up there as quick as possible. Mrs. Best.
You had mentioned the idea of possibly partnering with New Canaan on such a thing. That's something I'd like to discuss further. I don't really know much about where they have been or where they are, what their guidance has been in their town or their caseloads or anything else. I'm also not sure what it buys us necessarily to write the letter with them versus our own letter. So
It was just a suggestion.
totally.
So
And I don't mean
it
to say
does-
it's a bad one. I don't know what we get
Yeah.
or what we give
Yeah.
either way. So-
Personally, I'd rather continue just doing it on our own, and also a little bit of time is of the essence.
Mhm.
But I think I would confirm that they're sending a letter up also. And I think, again, power in the voices and the number of letters that get up there. Mrs. Ochman.
I believe they're in discussions. They don't have content for a letter like we do, and
Okay.
therefore they have meetings next week.
Okay,
And I don't
good.
know what our timeline is, but I would advocate that if we're saying that we want to make the decision based on our own factors, then the letter really needs to come from us.
Good
Because
point.
we would be making that differently, whatever our health professionals and their health professionals decide. So a
Good.
joint letter seems, but I love our New Canaan counterparts and I'm happy to work with them. That seems unwise for what we're asking. What I would need clarity on, and it was much clearer when we originally sent this letter in August, because the mitigation strategies were very fixed. We've been given a lot more choice now, screen and stay, 10 days, 5 days is a choice. I would need to know what we're asking for. Masks, like which mitigation strategies are choice? Admittedly, I've lost some track. Like I understand sports is a choice, but we've gone into kind of regional agreements with SEAC and stuff like that. So if the board could also clarify what is mandated and what do we currently have choice in, that would be helpful to me. I understand masks is a mandate at this point, but when we have mask wearing and other mandates should be evaluated throughout the year with local health officials in response. I'd like to know, are we saying, well, we want to choose that there's no quarantine? Are we saying we still like the choice of 5 to 10 and we're very comfortable with our 5? You know, I need to know more of what we're asking because there's actually much more choice now than when we originally sent this in August.
What do you suggest?
I'm just saying, maybe Dr. Adley could put together a grid, like this is currently under our control, this is not. I mean, we can go through, but I think in general, if the public is expecting us to advocate for certain things, we should be honest about what we're advocating for or what we even can advocate for. The screen and stay is the perfect one. You don't have to do screen and stay. Our district has chosen to. You don't have to do a 5-day quarantine. You can still be at a 10-day quarantine. We chose not to. So as we're asking for control, I'd like to know what we currently have control over and what we're asking for control over.
I'm just trying to read through here because it really ends with, I think the goal here was on the mask mandate, but it really requests that we delegate greater autonomy to the town, working with our health professionals on implementation of mitigation strategies. But you'd like just to define more what our mitigation strategies are relative to what the guidelines are.
I'd like to know what we're advocating for.
Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I'd argue it's not in our interest to have an overly prescriptive document. Things are going to change, formulas are going to change, guidance is going to change. I think the import we're really talking about is this should be a local control, local decision. And I don't think we have to get into specifics to do that. So I think this really is a policy, high level. Please let us decide what's best for us letter. And I don't think we should be getting into details. I think that's counterproductive.
So,
Go ahead, Mrs.
so are
Ochman.
we suggesting in the letter that we might want to say as a Board of Education, we'll decide whether kids quarantine or do not quarantine?
Read that last line, dude, because I think it was pretty telling what we asked last time.
Respectfully request that you delegate greater autonomy to the district administration and health professionals at the local level on the implementation of mitigation strategies, including whether or not students need to wear masks. So I think to some degree, I think what we all agreed to the last time is we wanted to make sure we were very clear that we were working hand in hand with our health professionals and looking at the right mitigation strategies. So, and I think the clear guidance that we're getting from the public is around the mask component of it. But I think everyone has to understand then what are the potential quarantining options where that goes.
But that language covers that.
Yeah.
We would use with the,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
say with Mr. Brown, I agree. Let's stay from from the
Okay.
details and keep it broad.
So
We'll-
let me be clear,
go-
I'm not asking for details in the letter. I'm asking for, as a board, to know what we're asking for. I agree that the letter should be broad. But what are we asking for permission to do as a board?
Can you read the line again, Duke?
No, I heard the line, John. I mean, I get it, but
So you want to understand what decisions we might be looking at making when the time might come?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking
Yes.
for?
But we don't know those because they change.
Yeah, I mean, I guess depending on the guidance, the decisions could be around quarantining and around masking. I'm not sure.
Not
what
even
else they would
quarantine,
be.
you don't have to mention, I mean, again, I'm not saying to read the line to be a wise guy. It's covered in that. It's a broad category plus mass.
Do you, Mrs. Ackman, do you have it?
I guess, are we asking for total decision-making around all COVID mitigation practices and quarantining?
But I think again, we're,
With our local health professionals?
yeah.
In the
I think-
letter, are we
I-
going to leave that line with?
Let's say the Darien Board of Education respectfully requests that you delegate greater autonomy to district administration and health professionals at the local level on implementation and mitigation strategies, which to some degree they have, and we've been making those decisions about quarantines and attendance at sports. And then the ultimate goal, including whether or not students need to wear masks. So is there anything else you want to clarify there about?
I'll
what
try one
we-
more time, and then
Yeah.
I guess I'll just look at the language.
Yeah.
We asked for greater autonomy.
Right,
We were given greater autonomy.
right.
What I'm trying to say, outside of masks, and I hear that the concern 100%. But we were given greater autonomy. What more are we asking for? Or are we just asking for the removal of masks? Or are we asking now to make all decisions? Because we asked for greater autonomy, we got it, exclusive of masks. How far are we asking to go? I just want to know, because so that we know what decisions we're asking to make.
I think I hear you. I think to some degree, it depends on what the decision is at the state level in terms of, are they pushing it down to the local communities or not? And then we would work in conjunction with our health professionals. So I
Well, then I think
guess
the letter doesn't
in
matter.
in me thinking about what you're saying, I'm not sure we could get there until we understand what the decision is.
Agreed, which
Yeah.
is the concern with the letter.
Okay.
I'm fine. Look, I will look at a draft, and
Okay.
I'm not
All right,
opposed to
good.
looking at a draft, but I think that we've kind of got ourselves in a quagmire here because we don't actually know what we're asking for. We asked for more control. We got more control. We, outside of masks
I
exclusively.
think
would
I think
agree.
what we really want is in some ways the mandate to end and for the control to really come back to the local communities in line with the health professionals. So, but look, Dr. Adley and I will talk through some of those points if there's anything we can add or tweak to the letter, but I appreciate that. Mr. Brown.
I was just going to suggest if we're questioning the scope, then let's say all, and they can always say, give us less, if that's the gating issue on this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option. If we're saying we would like all local control in conjunction with our health professionals, that's an option. So look, in order to keep moving, I think we're in a consensus. We need a letter. Dr. Adley and I will take some of the feedback back. We'll circulate the letter. And if we have to speak to folks individually about anything we need to tweak, we'll do that. Are we in agreement there?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention,
Yeah.
the definition of autonomy is the right or condition of self-government. So, I mean,
Okay. All right.
just to reflect on that.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Brown. Thanks for, yes.
Did we vote on sending a letter last time?
I think we should probably vote
I think
on
we
the
should.
letter.
So good. Thank you.
You have a motion, yeah.
Thank you,
Oh.
Mrs. McCammon. So I have a motion to, go ahead, Mrs.
I
Parent.
was saying, shouldn't we vote on the letter itself, not on
Mhm.
sending a letter?
We
What did we-
voted last time and actually amended it slightly after, but
Yeah, so let's vote on drafting a letter, and the letter will not be sent out till the board approves it. So when we, yeah,
Each one of us, like
Yeah.
we did last.
yeah, all right. Are we all in agreement on that? So that is unanimous.
you want a motion?
What was the motion?
The motion is to draft a letter to the state.
Thank you.
Second, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Best, all in favor? Unanimous. Good.
Oh,
Thank you.
No. I'm going to abstain until I see the
You're
content
abstaining.
of the letter.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ackman. Mr. Brown.
I had a quick follow-up motion to that.
Sure.
We had several months ago, Mrs. Hockman said we need to wear masks in this board meeting, in this boardroom to send a symbol. I'd like to make a motion that this board immediately send a symbol to our students and stop wearing masks.
Okay, do I have a
Oh,
second?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to get in the way, but we should probably amend the agenda again because we just amended the
Yeah,
agenda.
so if you want to amend the agenda again?
Sure. I'd like to amend the agenda again that we have a discussion about removing masks at this board table for the board members, staff. and our
Thank you,
visitors.
Mr. Brown. Do I have a second to that amendment? Mr. Sini? All those in
Now you
favor?
have to open it for discussion now.
Okay, yep. Thank you for keeping me on track here.
So since I was referenced, I believe as a board,
Yep.
we decided there were some people who objected that as long as masks were being worn in school, we would wear them as well. We can reconsider that. However, that was not a decision I made all on my own. I don't really have that much power.
Did we, you have to
Thank you,
actually
Mrs. Ocon.
vote to amend the agenda before you discuss it.
So let's vote to amend the agenda. It's unanimous.
Okay.
All right. All right, any further discussion around that?
What is the policy of the building right now?
In the building?
Yeah.
Kids have to wear masks.
No, this building.
Well, we've enacted this practice here with the physical distancing for the participants. And in this building, yes, you have to wear a mask.
So if we change the mask mandate in this building, does that also change the audience participation? There was a comment today about why only 14 people, which has to do with the social distancing that we have in place in this building, which is why also we have Zoom. And just a note, we had at one point 125 people on Zoom. So
Sure.
I think that's working, although we'd love to have people here, but we could never accommodate 125 people here anyhow. So anything further on that? So from a governor's mandate, does this building have to have masks? Since there are no students in this building.
I'm being tentative on this. I don't believe it absolutely has to, but we decided that we would.
Okay, so further discussion from a board standpoint, Mr. Senior.
So I would advocate, we follow the regulation or the rules of this
Yes, I
building.
mean,
I wouldn't want to separate this room from the building.
yeah, I would ask the board to, until something changes or something significant changes to try and stay the course on that.
All right. Any other further discussion on that?
No, just so you have a motion on the table, so you need to vote.
Yep. So there's a motion to vote for mask removal in this building. Do I have a second on that? Or you made the motion. Do I have a second?
John second.
No.
All right, so now
No,
the
I
vote. So all those in favor?
No, I did not second, sir.
All
Sorry,
right, so
sorry.
who's-
So there's no second.
There's no second, so the motion fails. But thank you, Mr. Brown, for bringing the conversation to the table. I appreciate that.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, Mrs. Worm.
Because, Dr. Adley just said he wasn't quite sure whether it fell under, can you just come back to us with that? Sure. Curious, I would like to know.
I think a lot of the conversation we've had is how do we want to lead with respect to our students and our teachers and clearly the stress that it's causing based on the parent feedback this evening. So I think we really have to keep that in consideration of how we want to lead in this room and in this building. So, but thank you for the conversation. All right, we will move on to Mr. Lynch and the acceptance of the Hindley and Holmes roof projects. Good evening, Mr. Lynch. Thanks for hanging with us.
How are you?
Good. We can barely hear you. I'm not sure if it's your mic or.
I don't know how to make my mic go up higher.
There you go.
That's better. Thank you, Mr. Lynch.
Okay,
Good.
so you have in front of you two resolutions. One is for the Holmes roof project and skylight, and one is for the Hindley roof project. And these resolutions are standard fare required by the State Department of Education when we are going to apply for a grant. The board passes these resolutions and that goes up to the state, and that the state looks at that and our invoices as the proof that the job is completed and the school district is satisfied with the work. And then they'll process our grant paperwork.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Any additional comments or questions on the Hindley and Holmes roof projects? All right, I can read all three of these in just one vote. What do you think?
We written as one?
I believe they are.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So whereas the following project, state project number 0350119RR, received local approval from the Darien Building Department, Darien Health Department, and the Darien Fire Marshal, and whereas the following project number 0350119RR has been completed And whereas the Darien Public Schools Board of Education has assumed all responsibility for the project, now therefore be it resolved that the Darien Board of Education formally accepts project number 0350119RR Hinley Roof Replacement as complete. So may I have a motion to accept that. Mrs. Ockman, second by Mr. Maroney. All those in favor, everyone that's here excluding Mr. Brown. Whereas the following project, state project number 0350118RR, received local approval from the Darien Building Department, Darien Health Department, and the Darien Fire Marshal. And whereas the following project number 0350118RR has been completed, and whereas the Darien Public Schools Board of Education has assumed all responsibility for the project, now therefore be it resolved that the Darien Board of Education formally accepts project number 0350118RR Holmes Roof Replacement as complete. A motion to accept, Mrs. Ockman, second by Mrs. McCammon. All in favor? For all those present at the table. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lynch.
Thank you. You have a good night.
You too. Appreciate it. Thank you. We will move up to moving on to the budget, follow-up questions and discussions regarding the budget and budget modifications under consideration. Mr. Rudel, you have crafted your spreadsheet, which will help as we capture this data. So we will, I think it's best if everyone is in agreement. Anything you want to add? Dr.
Yes,
Adams?
I just want,
Sorry.
just to mention, the board had some budget questions, which the responses are there. If you want to talk about them, that's fine. If you don't.
Sure. Let's start out there.
And I did receive just a couple other questions from the board since then that I have the responses to. If the board would like me to distribute them, I'll do that and then post them accordingly. Is that okay?
Sure. Great, thank you. It's just a one pager, Dr. Adler?
Yes, just one
Okay,
pager,
good.
yep.
So we will go to the January 18th document, Board of Ed questions, budget questions. We'll go through these real quickly. Number one, any updates or questions with respect to Middlesex Middle School students and the Genius Hour? Are we good?
We're good. Yep.
Number two, the music uniforms, the same cost in all years. Any further discussion on item two, music uniforms? We will move on to three, band uniforms. Any further discussion on band uniforms? Great, thank you. We will move on to four. Can the finance committee discuss how we want to report things going forward, such as psychologists, social workers? I think that is for a future finance committee board meeting and overall conversation around the budget and how we report things. Are we good there? Number five, I think we satisfied that on open choice. Number six, any additional questions on number six with respect to the 85 desktops? No. Number six, I don't know, Dr. It is number seven. Can the district budget specific expenses between RCs? Any additional questions on number seven? Good. Number eight, provide a list of budget items that would have to be cut in order to reach a sustainable budget. It was referred to. So I don't think we need any further conversation there. We'll get to that when we get to the specific RCs. Number nine, any additional questions on the budget transfers, which will be discussed shortly. And this is a forecast attached to that. Anything to add, Dr. Adley?
No, Mr. Chairman, no.
Okay, then the document that Dr. Adley just handed out, how do we determine and measure success of the initiative? So I don't know if anyone needs additional time to read through that, but any additional questions with respect to that? This is about the DEI initiative. Anyone need another minute to read through that? I think a lot of these questions were answered. Any additional questions or comments? Good.
We will add these questions in the correspondent format.
Sorry, what did you say?
I say we'll add these questions to the board questions in the format that the rest of them are.
So we move on to the budget book. I think it's best we probably go, Sarah, Jill, could I ask for backup on capturing some of this information? And Rich, you're prepared with your spreadsheet? All right, good.
Could I suggest one
Yeah, sure,
process thing?
Mr. Sini.
Since open choice, it sounds like we're gonna have a policy vote on.
Mhm.
Is there any way we could just hold that until the policy vote? Because
Yeah, I think if there's any additional questions or comments around open choice or the dollars that are in here specific to the liaison, we should have that. And then as we work through the agenda of the next meeting, we'll talk about a vote on the policy and the open choice.
so I'd just like to
program.
put a marker there,
Yep.
like, we're definitely gonna talk about it for
Yes.
public comment purposes, but
Correct.
it's contingent on a policy vote.
Yep, good. Thank you.
Duke?
Yes.
May I just suggest that we have a couple of board members and audience members that may not understand the process tonight? Can you just go through what we're going to do?
Yes, I touched base a little as we kicked off the meeting, but happy to repeat that. So we're going to go RC by RC. It's traditionally called a cut and add night, and anything specific to line items, board members will comment on or ask additional questions around those specific line items. And it's a process of, are there places we want to take dollars out, move dollars around, or add dollars? Anything else, Sarah, you think we
No,
should cover on that? Okay, good. Perfect. Yeah,
I think part of this as well is to signal to the public what we are looking to cut or add so that they can comment next week at the public hearing for us to receive the public comment on what offerings we're proposing to put up to be reduced, eliminated, or whatever the case may be.
yes, I said that earlier in the meeting, but it's been a while. So yes, I mean, you'll see our work this evening. And then we look forward to hearing from the public, their thoughts on the work that we do. And then we'll continue to work after that next weekend. So thanks. Good. Mrs. Ockman.
Just super quickly, if we're
Sure.
having a policy vote on something, maybe the chair and as policy chair, we can talk because the policy committee didn't know that.
Okay.
So usually we have a 2 cycle
Well, I
and
think
we
we
will
have
run
to
out of
see
time.
what the actual policy is. And so all right, we'll discuss that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so we will start with RC1.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Yes.
make just a quick note? If board members don't really have the number, but just have the concept of like where you wanted to add, or you mentioned that, we'll either get it to you now or get it to you afterwards. So if you know something, but you don't know the actual number or whatever.
Right, we'll flag it and Mr. Rudel will note that. So I will go to start the process, RC1, the Darien High School. Mrs. Ockman.
Account number 11013, the bursar specifically, I'm looking for, I believe we said last meeting that we've actually already been paying this. So I'm specifically looking for how we've done that and the full amount that we've been paying.
Sure. So they've been through budget.
You don't have to do it tonight.
Oh, okay.
We could just keep going. I appreciate it, but I'll try to move along.
Let's capture the information this
Yeah.
evening, which is good. So thank you, Mrs. Ockman. Anything else on RC1 Darien High School? Mr. Brown? You can propose changes.
I
Mr.
would
Browning.
like to propose a change of $59,952 for physical education teacher 110134.
So let's do this. So we're consistent here. If you could start out, Dennis, with the line item and the account number,
So
that would help. Thank you.
count number 110134, physical education teacher, it's an addition of $59,952.
Right. What are you proposing?
to remove that 59,952.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just add, so part of that is contractual wages for existing teachers. It's not just the new.
Okay, so I am proposing to remove the additional 0.6 FTE.
Thank you, Mr. Maroney. Continuing on RC1, Mr. Brown.
I propose a cut to 11013 from the proposed reduction is 16,881.
Say that number again, Mr. Brown.
Your mic, Mike.
Yeah.
It's 16,881.
16. No, the account number.
The account number is in RC1 11013.
Okay.
I have a couple more in RC1.
Okay, so you're cutting the 16,881.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
From RC, again, 1, account number 21220. I would propose a cut of $8,934.
Could you just name the line item also so everyone knows what we're speaking about?
Sure.
Curriculum supervision.
Correct.
What was your cut?
Cut of $8,934.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
I've got a couple more. You want to keep going?
Go ahead.
Next, we have in RC number 1102003, a cut of $7,000.
Just name the line item too, because
Yeah.
the eyes go to that quicker maybe than the numbers.
No problem. It's, what do they call it? Other student activities. Row 53.
Okay.
Next,
what are you proposing there?
The China trip. I don't think we need the $7,000 for people coming here. Just a hunch.
For people coming here?
Yeah, just for that trip.
That's
That
for
was
people
preparation.
going, that's for people going there.
Right.
Okay.
Sure that's how I read. Let's see, RC1, I would like to suggest in RC number 1, account number 21102.
Dave, when you give the line
Yeah, it's
number, it's
just-
super helpful.
I think if you give the
The
line
line number,
number.
I had it in the spreadsheet. I tried to be good with the spreadsheet.
Number 3.
Yeah.
What's the name?
Number 3. Line number 3. I'd like to propose a cut of 1 FTE, which I believe equals 192,890. But that is just working off the average, Rich, so that may not be the exact number. Thank
So
you.
you're proposing cutting one assistant principal
Yes, I am.
at the high school?
That's correct.
Okay.
Couple more. I would like to suggest an RC1 21602, which is the campus monitor.
Yep. Go ahead.
The campus monitor is a reduction of 41,551. And the purpose for that is not to get rid of the campus monitor, but to remove it from RC1 and move it over to the middle school. Lastly, I would like to propose an RC1 21215 department chairs,
21215.
a reduction of $589,655. And that's all I have on RC1.
That's department chairs.
What does that represent?
All of them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anything else on RC1?
Rich, where are the parking revenues? I marked that and I forgot. It would, or,
They are in RC1 on line 64.
okay, so this is a revenue line item that I'd like to have put into the school, basically school funds versus going into student activity account.
So just 100% of the parking
Yeah,
revenues?
yeah.
Okay.
So Rich, could you just give a little clarity on the student parking? kind of to the conversation we had earlier.
So we do collect student parking revenue, primarily seniors who park there. We collect approximately $23,000. $11,000 gets credited to the Board of Education's budget. The balance of those funds typically funds like senior events, so like a senior breakfast or a senior lunch or some type of an event. In some districts who credit 100% of the parking fees to the Board of Education's budget, they levy a fee towards the senior class and they collect that money. And then that funds, senior events. Some districts like ours, cut that amount in half. Half of it goes to the Board of Ed, half of it funds those senior activities. And then in some districts, none of it goes to the Board of Ed, all of it funds, senior activities.
Right.
There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's just really a choice as to whether or not you'd want to levy an additional fee on the student population.
So the effect of moving the parking fees back into revenue from student activity is then there are no funds to do those senior activities and would have to have a discussion about a senior student activity fee.
Correct.
Okay. So have we captured what Mr. Cini proposed? Okay. Anything else on RC1? All right, we will move on to RC2, Fitch Academy. Anything on RC2 for Fitch Academy? Good. We'll move on to RC3, which is Middlesex Middle School. Anything on Middlesex Middle School RC3? Mr. Brown.
So in RC3, line 21215, which is department chairs, looking for a reduction of 147,415.
Okay.
Next, in 21220.
21220.
Curriculum supervision. Looking for this may be a question or maybe a reduction. I'm not sure how to proceed. I showed as a 0.33 FTE getting paid 103,000. I'm not sure if that's a roll up or what that is. If that's
So the 0.33 does not get paid 103,000. So within that account is the release time for the art supervisor, which represents the 0.33. Also in that account is the academic club at the middle school, and then any other clubs and councils like Quiz Bowl, Geography B, Literary Magazine, things like that.
That's all in 21220.
Correct.
So those are the stipends for those clubs.
Perfect.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
No cut there. Sorry. In 24011, which is general tech supplies, a reduction of $16,125. Teaching supplies. Hello. Yeah.
Rich, what is that 16,125 again?
Genius hour.
Genius hour.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Brown?
Not for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Need to add the campus monitor.
Oh, yeah, you adding the campus monitor into Middlesex from the high school?
I did not, but I would if I knew the numbers. I don't have that. So,
All right, so let's,
we'll do that.
we understand what we're trying to capture.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, thank you. Anything else on RC3?
Just to clarify,
Sure.
was the idea to take a campus monitor from the high school and move it to the middle school so that there wouldn't be an increase at the middle school and the same at
That's
the
my
high
intention,
school?
correct, just to reallocate the resources.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So we go to RC5 Henley. Anything from RC5 Henley, First Elementary School? Yes, Mr. Maroney.
So line 510534, physical education teacher, I would propose the 10353 if that's non-contractual as well. If that's, is that the 0.2 for physical?
It's a portion of the contractual and the 0.2.
The part that's the 0.2 of the physical education teacher. And I would roll that for the whole elementary school.
Okay, so you want to roll that through all the elementary schools? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Maroney. Mrs. McCammon.
Can I ask that the information that we were provided be clarified a little bit? I went back and tried to read that chart and I still don't understand the scheduling. I understand how that individual person is scheduled, but I don't understand from reading that why we're unable to do now what we could do before. So if it could just be, I guess, augmented, please.
Thank you, Mrs. McCammon. Anything else on RC5 Henley? We'll move on to RC7 Homes. Anything on RC7 Homes?
Just to be clear, we're gonna, the open choice items for each one of these are, we're gonna talk at some point. I'm not gonna call out every open choice item.
Yep.
Rich, is that okay? Thanks.
RC8 Ox Ridge. Anything additional there on Ox Ridge? RC9 Royal. Anything there? RC9 Royal. RC11 Physical Education and Athletics. Mr. Brown.
In RC 11-21-201. 201, which is, I'd like to propose a cut of $191,969.
69 or 60?
69, I see. Could be 60.
960.
So you're cutting,
60, okay.
you're cutting the director job? Yeah.
That's correct. I'm cutting the budget for that position.
Recommend.
So you're eliminating.
That's my
that.
suggestion.
You're eliminating, your suggestion is to eliminate that position.
That would be the effect, correct.
Okay. Anything else on RC11 Physical Education?
I just want to note.
Sure.
I received a question about coaching ratios again. So I'll just note that that the addition of the field hockey coach made that a question for some folks. The second thing was I was asked about protective equipment for hockey in the wake of our most recent tragedy locally. If that equipment is included in this budget.
Question. Anything else on RC11? Mrs. Oconnor.
I just have a clarity for my notes. In RC1, we're taking out the other student activities for China. It was for the China trip. I'm sorry. I know I'm going back. Mr. Brown, is that what that was?
Correct.
Okay, thank
And
you.
actually do a quick follow-up. You asked if that would reduce it. It may or may not reduce the position. You could keep the position. You'd have to find the funds elsewhere. That it's the two options. I'm just suggesting the fund reduction.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is just a map cut.
Yeah.
Yep, got it. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, we'll move on to RC12 Maintenance. RC12 Maintenance. Mr. Maroney.
Account 71001 groundskeeper, the $80,065 that is not tied to pay increases. So the part of the FTE that's there.
Thank you, Mr. Maroney. Anything else on RC12 Maintenance? We will sing right over to music.
Wow, that was good.
You were waiting all week for that one.
Yeah. Sorry, gotta lighten it every now and then, right? RC13, Julie Best has agreed to sing for us.
Indeed.
Go ahead, Mrs. Best.
24011, I'd like to add $8,307, which I believe represents the 35% of that total cost for uniforms that would provide uniforms for next year's music program participants.
Thank you. Anything else on RC13 Music? Good. RC14 Art. Anything in RC14 for art? We will move on to RC15 Technology. Gonna be quick with the page flipping here. Right? get to the board. Bear with me a second, Mr. Brown. RC 15, technology, Mr. Brown.
RC 15. 13035.
13035, software maintenance.
I'd like to propose an increase.
Dave, Mike.
Sorry. I'd like to propose an increase to 13035 of $109,350 for the purchase of OpenGov. I would also like to propose in 21201, which is row 568, a reduction of $191,960.
Which represents?
The dollar amount equated to the position Director of Instruction and Technology.
Correct.
Right, anything else on RC 15?
15,
Mr.
no,
Maroney,
sir.
go ahead, Mr. Brown.
I'm good, Duke. That was all.
Okay, good.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Maroney.
I would like to propose a cut to the technology support 11044 of 76,700.
Say that again, Dennis.
Technology support, the FTE of 76,700.
Got it. All right, thank you. Anything else on RC 15? RC 16. Administration. RC 16 administration. Mr. Brown.
So in RC 16, in line 12001, a reduction of 18,500.
Okay.
Line 13013.
13013.
Correct. Other boards, a
Okay.
reduction of 18,300.
Okay.
And finally, 11011, a reduction of 31,730.
11011.
Correct.
A reduction of what?
$31,730.
Mr. Brown, could you clarify what you're doing, just so the public knows what to speak on?
I'm reducing an allocation, proposing a cut.
I know that, but in relation to anything in particular, so the public can comment, or?
Yeah, it's 11011.
What's the dollar amount? It's the superintendent.
It's the superintendent's salary,
Oh.
for your reference.
31,000. 31,730. It's a 10% reduction.
Anything else on RC 16? We're going to RC 17, which is health. RC 17, health. Anything there? All right, we'll go on to RC 18, personnel. RC 18, personnel. Mr. Sini.
Line 669, account 3100, budget control. I'd like to reduce it by 1 FTE, but so I calculated 72,807, but somewhere in that range.
So that, as it stands now, it's 3 FTE, Rich? Right, so you're proposing to go to 2?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sini. Anything else on RC 18? We'll go on to RC 19, curriculum. RC 19, curriculum. Mr. Sini.
Line 697.
697, okay.
Account 12001. Consultant services.
Yep.
I'd like to reduce that recommended budget by 20,000.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown.
So row 704,
704, professional development.
25003, reduction of $24,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thanks, Steve.
Anything else on RC 19?
Yeah, can we?
Sure, Mr.
sorry,
Roney.
Procedural question. If I wanted to change consultant services to reduce 45,000, can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, I would propose 45,000 to consultant services.
Dennis, would you mind just giving that line again?
Line 697-12001 consultant services.
And you would go down to 40.
I would drop 45,000 out of that.
Thank you.
You're cutting 45.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else on RC 19? Yeah, sure, Mrs. McKenna.
We are definitely doing field trips again.
Yes, there are many programs.
Right. Thank you.
RC 20. Finance. Anything in RC 20 for finance? RC 21, library and media. Anything in RC 21? Good. RC 22. Okay. RC 22, technology education. There. RC 23, summer school. Anything with summer school, RC 23. RC 24, special education. Anything RC 24 on special education? RC 25. Dennis, are
I'm
you thinking?
I
Talk-
don't,
throw it out there so we can talk
I think Mrs. Ockman brought this up, and I think it's something we have to be cognizant of, that I don't have the line number, but the school psychologist, which I am all for doing, which is free and comes from a grant, but by accepting that, I think we're now adding 1 FTE for our next budget, just so that we are aware and the public is aware that that is what's going to happen for the next budget cycle. I mean, not necessarily, we don't have to, but I would assume that that would continue for the next budget.
It's
cycle.
in this year's, it's in a grant this year for this upcoming, and then next year it'll be an FTE.
Correct.
I think that's,
So just to be clear for everyone, if that's
Well, just to be clear, we'll be considering it next year for those of, yeah,
right.
likely considering.
Yes, and that particular position, I would surmise would be probably in the budget somewhere next year, yeah, or the following year. That's probably a reasonable assertion at this point for that position.
No. So I fully support it, but I just want to flag and be aware that we're adding to next year's budget already.
good. Thank you, Mr. Maroney.
Probably. Thank you.
Probably.
Clarification. Thank you.
The forecast is RC 24, special ed, we're good? Thank you. RC 25, fixed expenses. Anything on fixed expenses, RC 25? RC 26, the early learning program, sorry. Yes, Mrs. Parent.
I would like to, on line 140, account 143003 ELP tuition. I would like to, and Rich, you're gonna have to help me with the number, but increase it to 4% instead of 3% increase.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Parent. Anything else on RC 26, the early learning program?
Can I just ask, is there a reason? Are you seeing a discrepancy, or you just feel like?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the numbers that were presented to us, and then I just added a 4% to those numbers that for this year's, we were still way at the bottom. So, I mean, we're second from the bottom, much lower than the rest. So I just think it should be, we have more hours and a more qualified staff. So I just think for the quality of the program, and it's fine.
Good, thank you. Move on to RC 28. I'm not sure anything there on COVID expenses. All right, so we are done with the RCs. Anything else? Have we captured? Go ahead, Mrs. Worm.
Yes, so I missed something. Can we,
Sure.
RC 16 administration,
Sure, let's go back to that. RC 16 administration. Okay,
line 612,
line 612, dues and memberships.
dues and memberships. I went to propose cutting $5,119, Center for School Change.
What was we?
It is 25026.
Anything else on the RCs we just went through?
Could I
Yes,
just,
Mrs.
could I just
Oconnor.
ask then, Rich, since you're keeping a running total,
Yep.
can you give us the total effect of adds and cuts to the operating budget at this point?
It will take a little bit of time.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mrs. Oconnor. We'll move on to capital. We will just start at Darien High School. Anything with respect to the 2022, 2023 capital projects? Middlesex Middle School, anything on capital projects teed up there? Kinley, there's one item there. Rich, are you guys working on one of the RTM F&B's questions just to kind of almost certify those elevator costs?
Yes, I believe it's in the batch that's waiting to go out.
Okay, good, thank you. Anything on Holmes Elementary School? Anyone want to change anything on Ox Ridge? Where do you want to go, Tara? You want to go back to it?
Finish capital. I forgot something in the operating, but if. with
Okay,
the
we'll go
board's
through this and then
indulgence
we'll go
after.
through this and we'll go back to make sure we
Yeah.
capture it. Good. Anything on Royal? Anything on Tokenique? Sure.
Roder, do we know when we need, is it in this budget cycle or before that we need funds for the libraries reimagined for Tokenique, the middle school and
So I think it's a conversation outside of this budget, and I
It is
touch
outside.
base with Board of Finance and what the administration is going to come up with as to when initial dollars are needed to scope out the project, and then what the timeline of that is. I think it's almost should go maybe back to the Facilities Committee to kind of discuss that, because I think we should also think about the kickoff of the other 3 renovations that are going on. There's some conversation, is there any synergies? It would change the ed specs, but any synergies to those libraries being done at the same time we have construction, the same time that we decide on the architect and the construction firm for those other renovations. So I would propose it go to the Facilities Committee, if that makes sense for everyone. Yep. Good. Thank you, Joe. On to central office. Anything for central office capital wise? Mr. Maroney.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic to say it here, but new HVAC unit for BOE meeting room of 155,000.
What do
As
you
we're
want to do with
freezing
it?
today, to reduce that, yes.
To reduce it,
To cut it, to cut the whole zero. Go to
cut the
zero.
whole thing.
Correct.
Okay.
You'll bring the fan then?
or the
Just-
space heater?
It's not benefiting students.
I'm
We can
joking,
suffer
I'm
through it,
joking, I'm
so.
joking.
Thank you, Mr. Maroney. Anything on the district wide, which predominantly next year is replacing 2 maintenance vehicles and adding a Suburban? Anything there? Okay. Good. So Mrs. Ackman, we will go back to the RCs.
Yeah, I'm sorry, with the board's
all right.
indulgence on RC 16, page 137, legal services,
Yes.
an increase of $50,000. It's account number 120.04.
You're increasing, we have a $25,000 decrease in there. You're putting in a $50,000 increase. Good.
Yep, well,
All
I
right.
need it after
Thank
this.
you, Mrs. Ackman. Anything else on the RCs? Mrs. Best?
Yes, I'm sorry. I missed a question also. I wanted to ask if we, I'm not sure what the budget implication would be, but to go to a true opt-in on the device for next year, what kind of adjustment will we need to make to this budget as it currently stands, if any?
Would you mind just saying what opt-in is relative
I'm sorry, the
to-
bring your own versus bring your own device at the high school. So if we were to say that each student could elect to receive a device from the district or bring their own device and not receive a device from the district, is there a budget implication to that versus the way it's designed or proposed right now for next year?
I'm sorry, isn't that the way it's proposed now? If somebody doesn't bring a
Yes,
device,
it-
they'll get one? I'm just trying to.
Well,
find
this is the
it.
semantics conversation we got into last night, and I'm still not clear on
That's
it. You
okay,
must
that's okay.
refuse to bring your own device in order to have
They'll
one
get,
assigned
they
to
will,
you.
they will have a device.
So there is not a budget implication. There's
that
nothing
regard, no.
changes from what I'm saying and what you're saying.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Thanks.
questions.
No,
Mrs. McCammon.
Back on where Mrs. Hoffman was with RC 16 legal services, can we get just maybe 5 years of looking at a trend for legal services? Because I know, negotiation years change those, just so we can see some history, please.
So, I mean, that's there, the trend, right? In terms
Does
of
it
where
go
we
back
went.
to
18, you want to go back beyond 18?
I just want to
Or
make
do
sure
you
we have
wanna-
enough of a cycle to compare an off year where we don't negotiate to a year where we do have a negotiation, so
Good
that we
point.
have a
Okay.
good budget number.
Okay. Makes sense, Rich? Okay.
Mrs. McCollum, would you mind just repeating the RC in the line for me?
It's the same one you were on, 12004. I'm
Legal
just asking
services.
For some background.
Okay, thank you.
On a regular year versus a year where we're doing negotiations. Okay, good. Thank you. Anything else, Mr.
Sticking
Maroney?
with this same RC, Mr. Sini brought up the open choice. So will that be included, the 12001, I believe, as a consultant service for open choice? So to remove the 10,000 in there if we're discussing all of open choice, correct?
Yes. Is that where that liaison is? The 10,000? It's part of the 20,000. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Maroney. Anything else on the RCs? Anything else on capital? All right, so Mr. Rudel will do his magic with our spreadsheet and get that out to us as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone, for putting all that on the table. We will have public comment next week around that. I think that will give us some indication as to our continued work on the budget, but the budget process continues. Thank you very much.
Could I just ask a
Yes,
question?
sure, Mrs. Best.
Does that spreadsheet get posted on the district website or is it made available to our community friends who are following along?
Well, as soon as it comes here.
It's public.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
good. Thank you. So we will move on to D, discussion on December 2021-22 financial report and proposed budget transfers. All right, Mr. Rudel.
So this is the financial report through December. Through December, we are forecasting a positive balance of $339,239, or about a third of our budget. The general education RCs are forecasting a positive 146,000. Special education RCs are forecasting a positive 236,000. And then the COVID RC is forecasting a deficit of 44,000. For COVID expenditures, we are forecasting about $53,000 in the operating budget. Similar to the previous ones, a little over $1 million in the grant for a total of $1,078,000. Salaries are forecasted at a positive 31,000. Salary savings and turnover are about 24,000. We do have a transfer recommendation for part-time help for a deficit of 15,000. Clubs and councils that are currently vacant for about 12,000. The remaining portion of budget control, which is unused, at 43,000. And then COVID expenditures for the teacher MOU at $34,000 to a deficit. Operating costs are forecasted at a positive 16,000. Legal fees continue to trend positive by about 43,000. We do have a deficit for the projected cost of the DEI consultant of 40,000. Materials, consultant fees, travel, PD are positive 23. Small deficit for Storm Elsa of 875. And then the COVID RC is forecasted at a deficit of $10,000 for PPEs. Fixed costs are a positive 67,000. Utilities in general are about positive 28,000. Property insurance, workers' compensation, and student accident insurance are almost $40,000 to the positive. Moving to revenue, field and building rental revenues are a positive 17,000. ELP tuition is short by about 34,000. And then excess cost is about 240,000 to the positive. We did submit a claim of about 3.6 million. We are still assuming a 67.5% reimbursement rate. We did discuss at the finance committee, the state's estimated revenues currently right now are at 82%. They did indicate that they expect that to drop, so we did leave that at the 67.5%.
Say that again, Rich. At 82%?
So the state's estimated revenues right now are at 82% based on all districts in Connecticut filing on December 1st. The state did say they expect that to drop when the March filing goes in. So that is why we left it at 67.5% in the forecast. So there are 4 transfers for consideration and approval. The first is for $34,000, and this would cover the estimated cost of the teacher MOU. We are recommending taking funds from salary savings and clubs and councils, teacher aid salary savings, workers' comps, dues and fees, sewer savings, and property insurance. The second transfer is for $10,000 for PPEs. Recommended taking funds from savings in the sewer account, as well as some salary savings custodial line item. Third transfer is for part-time help within facilities. We do have a couple individuals who are out on workers' comp. We did receive reimbursement from workers' comp. So that is to cover the cost of that, but it does cross broad object codes. And then the fourth transfer is for $40,000 to fund the DEI initiative. The bulk of the funds would come from savings and legal fees for $28,000, $5,000 from the superintendent consultant, $3,000 for a conference that is canceled for the superintendent, a reduction in itinerant travel, and then property insurance.
Do you want me to add to?
Excuse me?
You want me to reflect on the finance committee?
Sure, if you want.
So
Yeah.
just on the transfers, yeah, we got a consensus in terms of recommendation for, so the first 3 transfers, the substitute health supplies and part-time help, we unanimously voiced a recommendation to the board. Consulting services of $40,000. I called it a broad consensus, not unanimous in terms of recommending it to the board to execute to approve the transfer.
Thank you, Mr. Cini. Any board questions or comments on the transfers? Mrs. Parent.
I just have a question on the financial report itself, not the transfers. Do you want me to wait?
Sure, no, go ahead.
Okay, it's super quick, and I may have been asked at the finance committee meeting and I may have missed it, but the deficit that we're seeing in the building rentals, as was dance on the download, the dance on the DL, that reducing amount, are we seeing that from other groups, or is that a trend, or is that just?
So they are the first group that's told us
Okay.
they expect it to be reduced. Typically, we rent our buildings more in the spring.
Right.
So we'll probably find out more in the coming months.
Okay, thanks, sorry.
All right, anything else? All right. We'll move forward a motion to approve the.
Question.
Go ahead, Mr. Maroney.
So on the $40,000 in the sheet that was handed out this evening, it says that part of the $40,000 will be to support the DEI committee, supporting additional professional development, developing student leadership, and facilitating community conversations. I would like a little more detail on facilitating community conversations. What does that entail? What will that look like? Do we know? And how will that play out?
So Dennis, is that pertaining to this transfer, or this is for next year's?
For me, this is where the next 40K budget will transfer. That's in the second line. So to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but is that what part of this 40,000 transfer is for? Yes. So I would like to hear more about the community.
So prior to the pandemic, the district and the larger community was engaged in community conversations that were facilitated by MCCJ. Following the incidents that happened at the high school and the middle school in the fall, there was a request from the community to continue those. So the idea would, originally there were 3 and the adjustment was 2. So this would be 2 facilitated conversations with identified community leaders and representatives from the school district to continue that dialogue.
So this is not the consultant Ken Shelton leading a community.
It is.
It
yes.
is as well.
You mean in the model of it's been done before, and now it's being done again with a different facilitator?
Yes.
Yes, Mrs. Worm.
So I just have, I'm just slightly concerned about the idea of community engagement by Ken Shelton when we have such a division on that, right? So is he then only speaking to the half of the community that is for him, and then we're leaving out the other half? And I think that I also want to make the point that a lot of this is not, it's not about that people are against diversity and inclusion. I think a lot of it has to do with the process in which Ken Shelton was hired. It is broken down a lot of trust within the community, and I just don't see how him being involved in community outreach is going to be helpful in our situation.
Thank you, Mrs. Warren. Any comments?
Mr.
Can I ask a
Kenny.
question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mrs.
Sorry.
Best.
I just wanted to ask, well, two things. First, I do think we just need to be careful in general about generalizing bodies of the public. Half are for and half are against. I don't think we have any data to that effect. So I just think we have to be careful and use our words carefully. And Chris, if you could just explain a little further, would this be an open forum with the general public in the community, or was this more as it was in the past with community leaders from various areas? I think we had librarians and police, and Mrs. Stevenson was part of these conversations. Can you just give a little more color on what those would look like?
The spirit of how this was designed was like the latter that you just mentioned, that it would be identified community leaders that would be representative.
Thank you.
Mrs. Oconnor.
So I'm just a little confused what we're considering. We're talking about Ken Shelton, but we've been asked to consider a financial transfer. Up front, I thought the board had a role in consultant, and I could still argue for that, but I think that council has advised us that's not the case. So at the moment, we're considering a financial report and a financial transfer, and yet we're talking about a personality. So I kind of need to know where we are in space. I was told we were considering a financial transfer.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
To fund the DEI initiative.
True, and then, but then we're talking about personalities and this and that, like
Understood.
we're one or the other.
Anyone else? All right. Go ahead, Mrs. McCammon.
I think in the spirit of understanding that this has been a complicated issue, these kinds of conversations are going to be hard. I hope that the members of the community understand the board is listening. We're not always going to agree with you. You're not always going to agree with us. But we are listening to you, and we hope that while you may like or not like our decisions, we want you to know that your voice is important. You know, I will vote for this transfer for the DEI work. I stand behind what's outlined in the administrative memo. I think things like culturally responsive materials are important. I want to see kids with disabilities represented in my picture books, that in my kids' classrooms. I want to know that we have authors of all different kinds and colors. And there are different ways to get there. I get that. And there might be different people to hire. But that's not our authority. So I stand behind the work and I'll vote for the transfer, but it's not because I'm not listening and not hearing. And I do think we'll have to continue to have the conversation together at the board table about the work that's done. And maybe at the curriculum committee, should that ever be appropriate. But anyway, I'm done.
Thank you, Mrs. McCammon. Any other board questions or comments?
I just
Yeah,
quick one.
sure,
I mean,
Mr. Sini.
I'm going to support the transfer too, but this isn't a solve all. And I think a lot or
Say that again, Mr.
this is not going to solve all this transfer. And I
Correct.
think as a community, we have a lot of work to do on that front. So there's a lot of everything or nothing. I mean, this is just a drop in the bucket of the effort we have going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Sini. Yeah, I think if we go back in time, we gave the administration instructions to go do the work on DEI. Yes, I think we've heard from the community. We'll continue to hear from the community. I think this has to be fluid. I think at this point in time, the DEI work has been outlined of what's going to be done and who's going to be doing that work. I think overall the administration has heard from the community and from the board. I would hope that the people involved or the organizations involved in doing that work will expand, and we'll bring in the people in the organizations we need as we go forward. And just that I know we'll hear back from the administration on a regular basis, to the point of many comments this evening, of how is the work going? What is the feedback like? I'd like to hear more about when those community interactions take place, who's involved. I think getting input from the board and the community would be important, because I think to other points at the board table, there's a lot of conversation around this. I'm not going to get into the fors and the against. There's just been a lot of good conversation and good questions and good feedback around it. But the goal is to move the district forward with the DEI work. And I think that will continue to evolve, and that's what's important. Mrs. Oconnor.
Well, since we are talking about how we feel about DEI, I just would say, I think we have heard a concern that in some way that the schools want to raise children. We don't, but we do have a responsibility to react to what is happening in our schools. And it is happening in our schools. We are getting swastikas at schools. And so we believe the community members that say that they are raising lovely, wonderful children, and we want to believe that. But when we have people coming and saying that there is hate and there's not inclusion, we have a responsibility during those school hours to deal with that. And we have a responsibility if there's a tornado that goes through a school, and we have a responsibility to do a lot of things that people do not understand by law, we must handle when we have children in our schools. So no one is saying that you're not doing no one is saying to the people who are saying, I'm doing a great job and I'm sending good people out into the world. We see you, we hear you, and we want to support that. But we also have a responsibility to all the children in our school and all of what they are experiencing in school. And it is not an isolated incident. It is a repeated incidence we are seeing, and we have to do something. So I thought we were considering a financial transfer, but if we're all kind of putting throwing our hat in the ring, that's where I am. I
That's
agree with
fine.
Mrs. McCammon that we hear you, and we're not making snap judgments up here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate the context, and I think it's our duty here at the board. If there's more conversation to be had or our points want to be voiced, it's important just because of the conversation and feedback we've heard. So go ahead, Mr. Maroney.
Yeah, so I, for one, would like to apologize for myself to the administration, because I think we've been very ambiguous, thank you, on our direction to the administration. I think we asked the administration to do something, and they have, and I think that's partly why there is a firestorm, because we weren't very prescriptive on what we were looking for, and we just left it up to you to do, which is part of your job as well. But I think it was also we just said, do something, and that's not real clear direction from us, and we should do better job on at least one person's opinion on that. So
Appreciate that, Mr. Maroney. I will say also, and then we can wrap this up and move forward. It's important that we've heard you, and I think there are lessons learned here in terms of the process. And so we hear that loud and clear, and there's work to be done there. And I don't think anyone would not acknowledge that we've got to do a better job from a process standpoint as we move this stuff through the conversation pipeline to reality. So, all right. Thank you. May I have a motion to move forward on the budget transfers as presented?
Can I suggest
sure.
that we break these up?
Sure,
Just so
that's fine.
Okay.
Sure. May I have a motion on the first proposed transfer of $34,000? Mr. Sini, second. Mrs. Ockman, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. May I have a motion on the $10,000 transfer for COVID health supplies? Mr. Sini, Mrs. Best, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Rich, this 15,000 is a transfer too, right? All right, may I have a motion on the salary workers' comp transfer of $15,000? Mr. Sini, Mr. Maroney, all those in favor? Thank you. May I have a motion on the transfer of the $40,000 for consulting services for the DEI work? May I have a motion? Mr. Sini, second by Mrs. Best, all those in favor? That is Sini, Best, Ockman, McCammon, Deneen, and Parent. Anyone against? Mr. Brown and Mr. Maroney, and Mrs. Worm. Anyone abstaining? The transfer passes. All right, thank you. Thank you for the conversation around that. We will move forward on the first reading and discussion of proposed revisions to the Board of Education policies, 1025 automatic external defibrillators, 1050 possession of deadly weapons or firearms, 1075 green cleaning programs, 1125 pool safety plan, 1150 sexual offenders, 1175 prohibition. I guess I don't like that word. Prohibition against smoking. It must be an Irish thing. 1275 freedom of information and freedom of information request log, 1300 non-discrimination community. Again, this was gone over at the policy committee. This is a first reading and discussion of proposed revisions. I will turn it over to Mrs. Ockman and Ms. Sion. Ms. Sion.
So I think really that the only thing that's not required by law, we updated legal references, we updated statutory changes, but for the policy committee especially, we did go back and clarify that the requester's name and address will be included unless it relates to their child, in which case that would be a FERPA violation. And then that the number of pages may be included. And if you look at the log, I've started to include them because when it becomes meaningful, Dr. Adley and I had a conversation, it'll be helpful for you to know exactly how much time is being spent.
Okay, good. Thank you, Ms. Sion. All right, any additional board questions or comments with respect to the first reading and discussion of these proposed revisions? Sure,
That
Mrs.
if
Ockman.
board members have questions that we can talk about it tonight, but if they have additional questions, to please get it to us so we can review it during policy and make a full recommendation at the next meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you. We will move on to the FOIA log review. Ms. Sion.
I mean, I think that it speaks for itself. We've had an uptick in recent months. And, we're working with council, but the Freedom of Information Act requires you to comply. So that's what we do.
All right, any questions or comments with respect to the FOIA log? All right, Mrs. Ockman.
I have a question on man hours. A few years ago, we had so many FOIAs and so many pages because the requests were so broad that we actually had counsel doing some of it. Are we able to handle this in-house? Are we seeing an uptick that we're concerned that we just may need to allocate legal fees towards it?
No, you know what? No, I mean, we're doing it. I read 10,000 emails. They were fascinating and I'll continue to do it. So, we'll make it. We were happy to save the legal fees when we
Okay.
decided to bring it in.
But I think to your point, Ms. Sion, we just need to keep track of it because we've made some decisions over the years to go in-house with reviewing these to save dollars. But if we're bumping up against thousands and thousands of emails that have to be reviewed, that's impacting productivity. It's also impacting the budget. So, or it could impact the budget with additional resources that we may need. All right, Mr. Senior.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we could maybe highlight to the community that if they do have a FOIA request, totally, acceptable, of course, by law. But if maybe they could be more targeted, if they're looking for a specific item or something, maybe define those. Because I think that's where you get into the 10,000 email issue, right, Marge? So that would be very helpful. If they're looking for a broad item, we can't regulate it, but just have a realization that it does have an impact on the person hours that are employed to meet that request.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I spoke to Mr. Mooney about this, if there are cases up the line in terms of someone looking for 50,000 documents. So we're happy to have the conversation and make sure we understand what you're looking for to narrow it down so we can get the right information out to you. So again, we just appreciate the partnership. And if we do reach out to clarify, it's just to get you the information that you're really looking for in a timely manner. So any additional questions or comments on the FOIA log? We will move on to further discussion and action on board master agenda for February 2022 to August 2022.
This agenda includes just what I spoke about earlier, the update from Marion and Friend on the presentation on May 10th, according to our schedule.
Mrs. McCammon.
We talked about a couple of things during the budget. Well, first off, thank you for adding Dr. Friend. I'm excited to see that. We did talk about updates on a couple of other things. I just wrote down the DEI committee, the elementary APs, in the library, an update of just where we are in the library.
On the library one, yes.
Yeah.
So we can look to add those in there and still keep meetings at no more than 2 hours. Nice goal. Good. And anyone else that has any input, we are further discussion and action. So are we ready to?
We should probably bring this back again.
Okay, that's fine. So between now and the next meeting, if there's anything else to Jill's point or what we feel should be added, please send a note in. So we'll put that off to the next. We will move on to the personal action report. Ms. Sion.
Just one more resignation.
Okay. Ms. Sion, I think it's important as we have a lot of discussions in the community and there's some questions from the RTM committees. How is recruiting going for openings that you have?
It's going. I mean,
Okay.
we're trying, but it's.
It's a struggle.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to approve the personal action report as presented. Mr. Sini, second by Mr. Maroney. All those in favor? All right, good, thank you. Michelle, we will go back to public comment.
For participants in person, please wait for the chairperson to acknowledge and call each participant to the microphone. For participants via Zoom, please click the raised hand option. The facilitator will acknowledge and unmute each participant. For all the participants, please state your name and address for the record log. Each participant will have up to 3 minutes to comment.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll start with any of our friends in the audience.
Amy Zerby, 9 Morehouse Drive. So my comments do not apply to most of the Board of Ed members. Earlier, I quoted from the Board of Ed website that schools exist for children. Some of tonight's proposed cuts do not reflect this. I believe that some of the cuts were proposed out of spite for teachers, MMS, DHS, and the district. Shame on you for not putting our children first. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking this evening. Anyone else in the audience? Michelle, we'll move over to Zoom.
Greg Grambling, you are unmuted and recognized.
Greg, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Greg. Go ahead.
Great. I'd like to express extreme disappointment with the board's decision to move forward with continued funding of California consultant Ken Shelton against the wishes of nearly 1,000 members of our community and school. In reference to Darien Public School Policy 6330, Curriculum Design, Basic and Special Instruction Program, which references to the sensitive nature of programs such as those pertaining to family life education and the opportunity for parents who do not wish for their children to participate in family life education, I will be submitting a letter to the principal of my schools, my children's schools, and the board informing them to exempt my children from any such courses, including any talks, classes, or anything related to Ken Shelton. Ken Shelton has already started to attempt to indoctrinate our community with CRT, including topics on white privilege, anti-racism, and microaggressions, among others. I would encourage other parents who feel strongly against Ken Shelton to do the same and submit a letter to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grambling.
Stefan Amrali, you are unmuted and recognized.
Good evening. This is Stefan Emrali, 531 Hollow Tree Ridge Road. I have 4 children in the school district, elementary, middle school, and high school. I want to apologize in advance for not being Darien proper. However, my children's future matters more. First, I want to just talk quickly about kids parking at the high school. I think it's unreasonable and to ask the kids to pay for parking when they are essentially saving the district money by not taking the bus. $23,000 is pennies comparing to the massive $110 million budget that we have at the school. So that's a quick comment about that. Regarding open choice, school administration is focused on no walk students, masks, and other things that's deemed as doing good. Those children have been exposed to something that's unprecedented in American modern history. They're now being told that human contact is a negative thing for them, that interaction with other people does not yield the social skills that they're supposed to get. They're afraid of interacting with each other subconsciously and consciously. We need to focus on recovering from that. And we should not be focused on other school districts and other initiatives and programs. The mental well-being of those children is very important. I saw massive degradation in my kids' social skills, weight gain, depression, negative thoughts, and that just was directly resulted from the idea of interacting with other people is a bad thing in their subconscious. So the school, instead of being very focused on what's so-called doing good, the road to hell is paved in good intention, obviously, we should be focused really on the well-being of Darien kids. We hired Mr. Adley's administration to take care of Darien kids, and that's what should only be a thing that should matter right now. We need to unmask our kids. My family had COVID, my extended family had COVID. The vast majority of the population had COVID in one variant or another. It is a risk to people with pre-existing conditions, and those are the ones who are supposed to be protected. Unmask our kids. They're not supposed to not see human interaction and reaction to there's no human response in communications because they can't see their face. And I want to speak briefly about the swastika incidents. When I was a kid, if somebody did that in my school in Brooklyn, they would have got a slap on the back of the head and says, hey, you're being, an idiot, so to speak. And the school wouldn't have not done this, what we're doing right now. We take an extreme measure, which is encouraging kids who seeking attention to draw more swastikas and take it to the next level.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up. Thank you for speaking this evening.
Debbie McGarren, you are unmuted and recognized.
Good evening, Debbie McGarren, 60 Holly Lane. I would just like to clarify any confusion from the mass conversation from the very thoughtful speakers this evening. We want local control and parental choice, which will include the following. Mask choice, you can wear a mask if that's what makes you comfortable, but we will no longer require or be mandated to wear them in our school buildings. Social distancing, 6 feet apart, 3 feet apart, 2 feet apart, whatever it is for that choice of the week will no longer be in place in the classrooms, hallways, lunchrooms, gym classes, recesses, library, buses, etc. Contact tracing and quarantine. These measures will be lifted. We will return to normalcy by using common sense. If you are sick, you stay at home until you feel better, and you will stop shaming and making the children feel like lepers. We will return to respecting individual health information and privacy of their health data. The well-being of our children matters. It is time to give them their lives back. When does the harm and abuse being done to these children start to matter? We never voted or approved for any of these measures, and we will no longer go along to get along. It seems after tonight's testimonials, our resources would be much better spent on speech therapists, school psychologists, and I'm sure a myriad of other special services that our children would benefit from in order to heal. It's time for this board and Dr. Adley to do its part. Send a letter to Hartford demanding to unmask our children. And lastly, kudos to our brave Darien teacher that spoke up this evening. Please know that you are not alone and you are on the right side of history.
Thank you for speaking this evening.
Lauren Haley, you are unmuted and recognized.
Lauren, can you hear us? Lauren, can you hear us? Lauren, can you hear us? Your mute is on. Michelle, let's move on to the next person.
Laura Pesky Gray, you are unmuted and recognized.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Good, go ahead, thank you.
I know that I'm at 131 Holmes Avenue. For those of you who are still around, you know my position on Ken Shelton and open choice. But since funds have been transferred, I know that Mrs. Worm was concerned about the people that were opposed and the community discussions. I would actually like to be involved in and persuaded and understand better about all the people that are in support of Ken Shelton and what he is doing for our community. So, Dr. Adley, we always have had a good relationship, and I look forward to being part of those community discussions. And we'll go from there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for speaking again this evening.
We'll go back to Lauren Haley.
Sure.
You are
Lauren, can you hear us?
unmuted.
Lauren, can you unmute? All right. Anyone else out there, Michelle?
Erin Noonan, you are unmuted and recognized.
Thank you. To Mrs. Best, Mrs. Ockman, Mrs. Parent, Mrs. McCammon, Mr. Deneen, and Mr. Sini, thank you. Thank you for voting for the transfer for Mr. Shelton. Thank you for prioritizing the students. Thank you for taking action. Tonight, you have given hope to the children in our community who are hurting from repeated physical, emotional, and mental abuses because they are different. Tonight, you have given hope to the parents who love them. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking.
Stefan Amrali,
Stefan's already spoken, right?
correct?
Yep. No, he spoke this evening, right?
Lauren Haley is the last one.
Okay. But Stefan already spoke in the second public comment. Okay. So who's next?
Miss Lauren Haley.
Lauren, can you hear us? Okay. Anyone else?
There are no more raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for participating this evening and for the public comment. May I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Brown, second by Mrs. McCammon. All those in favor? That is